cultivating a tree of life in the world of wizards. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Wizard Apprentice, Immortal Cultivation World. Father, I don't have much money left, and my life is getting increasingly difficult. I can hardly maintain the dignity of a noble. Wizard training is more expensive than rumored. Magic potion materials, spell materials, all of these require a lot of money to buy. Fortunately, my training progress is very encouraging. Although I'm not among the best in the academy, I'm at least in the middle. You know, the Kingdom Wizard Academy is the best place to practice witchcraft in the Kingdom of Valant. Those who can practice witchcraft there are all top people. Even the worst apprentice there can become a famous wizard in the future. Although I'm ranked in the middle, I'm enough to help my family's leap into the aristocratic class. Dear Father, in order to prevent financial constraints from affecting wizard training, I beg you to send enough money. Roughly calculated, 500 Valant gold coins are enough. Ronan held the quill pen and wrote on the apricot yellow parchment. After a while, most of the parchment was covered with neat words. Ronan put the quill back into the pen holder, picked up the parchment, and blew on it. After a careful inspection, he saw that the ink on the paper had dried, so he rolled up the parchment. Then, he poured the melted red wax on the joint of the rolled parchment. When the red wax was about to solidify, he stamped it with the family emblem. After doing all this, he stood up, opened the door, walked down the small attic he rented, took the parchment, and walked towards the pigeon tower in the center of the city. The pigeon tower is a place for raising homing pigeons. The homing pigeons in it have been transformed by witchcraft and are smarter than ordinary homing pigeons, recognize the road more accurately, and fly faster. Ronan went to the pigeon tower, paid the money, and watched the homing pigeons with parchment rolls tied to their feet flapping their wings and flying towards the blue sky. Past memories surged in his heart again. In his previous life, he was a social animal. His surname was Eluo and his name was Nan. He lived a very hurried but ordinary life. 3 months ago, I worked until 2 in the morning at the company. I was so tired that I lay down on my desk. When I woke up, I traveled to the body of a 16-year-old young man, Ronan Lawrence. Ronan Lawrence is the second son of Baron Leighton Lawrence, and Leighton Lawrence is a noble in the southeastern province of the Kingdom of Valant. His status in the aristocratic circle of the southeastern province is about the middle. More than 3 months ago, the original body bought a meditation method from a wizard. The original body tried to practice and found that he had wizard talent. However, I don't know if the practice method is wrong. After practicing for 10 days, the original body suddenly felt difficulty breathing. I wanted to call, but I couldn't make a sound. Gradually, my eyes went black until I completely lost consciousness and suffocated to death. He came through at this time and occupied this body. After Ronan traveled to this world, he couldn't resist the temptation of extraordinary power and also had the idea of practicing wizardry. The meditation method that the original body bought had problems, and he dared not continue to practice it. So, according to the memory of the original body, he wanted to go to the Kingdom Wizard Academy for further study. This academy is the highest place for witchcraft practice in the Kingdom of Valant. If you enter it, you can learn authentic and safe meditation methods. Moreover, there will be high-level wizards who will teach you in person. But when he followed the caravan with great interest, crossed the distance of most of the kingdom, and went to the capital of the kingdom, Triumph City, to participate in the wizard qualification test of the academy, he was tested with a qualification of C lower. This qualification, let alone not meeting the minimum requirement of B upper to enter the academy. Even if he practiced to become a formal wizard, there was little hope. Just as he left Triumph City sadly, and was about to enroll in a second-rate wizard academy, he started his second time traveling. Ronan recalled and returned to the small attic unconsciously. After entering the door, he immediately locked the doors and windows, walked into the bathroom, and snapped his fingers. Snap. Suddenly, the scenery in front of him changed. The bathroom, decorated in medieval style, has become an antique room. He walked to the side of the room skillfully and opened the mahogany wardrobe carved with flowers, birds, fish and insects. After taking off his tunic, cloak and other clothes, he took out a set of light blue long clothes and put them on. Then, he walked to the dressing table and sat down. Facing the bronze mirror on the table, he untied the hairband behind his head. His black, slightly curly hair was scattered. Then, he gathered his hair and tied a bun on the top of his head. Then he picked up a wooden hairpin carved with cloud patterns from the dressing table and inserted it. At this time, he looked at the bronze mirror again. The person in the mirror was a young man with black hair, black pupils, fair skin and a straight nose. Then, he moved his eyes away from the bronze mirror, stood up, and pushed the door out. What came into view was a quiet courtyard. The floor was paved with bluestone, and there was a rockery and fish pond in the corner. This is the world he traveled to for the second time, a world similar to the ancient world in his previous life. When he first crossed over, he found that he could travel back and forth between the two worlds as he pleased. Later, he found that the speed of time in the two worlds was basically the same. Moreover, the new world was also filled with energy particles from the wizard world. But compared to the wizard world, it was very thin. If there were energy particles, there might be extraordinary powers. Ronan thought that the future of wizards was bleak, so he began to explore this world. After exploration, he found that this world also cast gold and silver as currency. So he melted the gold coins given by his father Leighton Lawrence into gold nuggets, brought them to this new world, and exchanged them for silver notes at the bank. After having money, he rented a large mansion and invited a group of servants and maids to watch the house. From the second son of the Baron, he suddenly became Mr. Luo. He has black hair and black pupils. In addition to his more three-dimensional facial features and a taller figure, his appearance is not inconsistent in the world of immortal cultivation. In order to inquire about the news of this world, he often lingered in restaurants, casinos, and places of love. Soon, he found out that there were immortals in this world. However, there was a big difference between immortals and mortals. Most mortals had never seen an immortal in their entire lives. They didn't know where to find an immortal and embark on the path of immortality. Ronan inquired for several days, but still couldn't find out the news of the immortals, so he gave the housekeeper some money and asked him to inquire for him. He returned to the wizard world to deal with the affairs of the wizard world. Ronan wore cloud boots and stepped on the bluestone slabs. As soon as he walked out of the moon gate, several women's voices sounded. "The young master is out. Welcome, young master." 12 girls with beautiful faces, red lips and white teeth, stood on the left and right, bowed slightly, and saluted Ronan. These were the maids bought by Ronan, named Xiran, Xiu, Kiwen, Behan, Jinlian, Kili, Tangxiang, Zisha, Pinga, Chunmi, Nanayu, and Hangxiang. After nodding slightly to the maids, Ronan continued to move forward. "Master, you are out." An old man with white hair and beard came hurriedly. This man was the butler hired by Ronan, named Guanfu. He used to be a butler in a family of officials. But the family offended the dragon, and their house was ransacked, leaving him homeless. Later, he was taken in by Ronan, and the old man was very grateful. When asking for information, he was very active, and put in a lot of effort. Guanfu walked forward, and the white goatee on his chin trembled slightly. "Master, someone came to see you, and he said he knew the news of the immortal cultivator." Chapter 2 Ancient Wood Longevity Skill. In the reception room, Liu Han sat restlessly on a sourwood chair. He was about 30 years old, wearing a linen shirt, with a book hidden in his arms. He was the son of a poor family. His ancestors had been rich for several generations, but when it came to his father's generation, the family began to decline. Liu Han was uneducated, lazy, and a gambler. After his parents died, he lived by selling the family's belongings. Now, there is not much left in his family. Yesterday, he accidentally heard in the gambling house that there was a Mr. Luo in the city who liked to seek immortals and ask questions. So he remembered that there was a secret book of immortal cultivation left by his ancestors at home. However, he didn't know whether this secret book of immortal cultivation was true or not. In his opinion, the content of this secret book was too absurd. But the description of cultivation in the secret book was very detailed. For those who like to seek immortals and ask questions, just reading the text inside can also satisfy their eyes. I hope this Mr. Luo is interested in the secret book. Liu Han sniffed and bowed to his ancestors in his heart. He didn't expect the secret book to sell for a high price. 1 teal was a profit, and 2 teals would make him laugh even in his dreams. As for 3 teals, he didn't dare to think about it. If he got 1 teal and took the silver to the gambling house, he might be able to win back all the money he lost this morning. Ronan stepped over the threshold and came to the reception room, where he saw Liu Han, who was a little embarrassed. When Liu Han saw Ronan, his eyes lit up slightly. He had heard that Mr. Luo, who suddenly appeared in the city, was young and rich, but he didn't expect him to be so young. Mr. Liu Han stood up and sang a greeting. Ronan also clasped his fists in return. After the two sat down, Ronan immediately said, I heard that Brother Liu has news about a cultivator. That's right. Liu Han took out a yellowed book from his arms. My ancestors once had immortals, and this secret book is the immortal cultivation secret book left by my ancestors. Can you show it to me? Ronan said. After hearing Ronan's words, Liu Han's heart was startled. First, he was afraid that Ronan would take his secret book without paying. When he walked into the living room, he saw the house guards. They were muscular and strong like stone towers. He was afraid that he couldn't even move one of their fingers. Second, the secret book was too absurd. He was afraid that Mr. Luo would lose the desire to buy it after reading it. But he knew that he was in a weak position now, and the seller would definitely inspect the goods before delivery. So, he handed the secret book to Ronan with trepidation. Ronan gestured to the servant who was waiting on the side. The servant ran to take the secret book from Liu Han and handed it to Ronan to take a look. After Ronan got the secret book, he turned the page and said in his heart, Hang Meng, analyze the secret book. Hang Meng was the AI purchased by his company in his previous life, and it accompanied him through countless nights. This AI came with him through the time travel, and was affected by the energy particles of the wizard world, and its intelligence level has evolved. As soon as he finished speaking, a layer of fine mesh blue light immediately appeared on the secret book in his eyes. Gradually, the obscure ancient words on the secret book, after being converted by AI, turned into streams of information that kept pouring into his mind. Immortal cultivation technique, ancient wood longevity technique, cultivation conditions. 1. The cultivator has wood spiritual roots. 2. Spiritual plants, or parts of spiritual plants that are still alive. Cultivation steps. 1. Practice the ancient wood longevity magic power. 2. Use the magic power to sacrifice and refine the spiritual plant into the birth longevity tree effects. 1. Strengthen the body and increase lifespan. The essence of plants and trees refined by the birth longevity tree and the essence of the sun and the moon will be fed back to the cultivator, increasing lifespan and improving physical fitness. 2. Improve the speed of cultivation. A part of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth refined by the birth longevity tree will enter the cultivator's body. 3. Change qualifications and cultivate acquired spiritual bodies. The qualifications of the cultivators will improve with the age of the natal immortal tree. After 100 years of the natal immortal tree, the cultivator will obtain a greenwood spiritual body. After 1,000 years, the cultivator will obtain a yewood dharma body. After 10,000 years, the cultivator will obtain an eternal evergreen body. Other matters. 1. The type and quality of the selected spiritual plant will affect the growth potential of the natal immortal tree. 2. If the natal immortal tree is destroyed, the cultivation of the acquired spiritual body will fail immediately and must be cultivated from scratch. 3. The natal immortal tree should be planted in a place with rich spiritual energy. The richer the spiritual energy, the better the spiritual plant grows, and the more feedback it provides to the cultivator. This technique can actually change qualifications. Ronan was delighted. His C-level qualifications were too poor. Even with the help of AI, he was still much slower in cultivation than a wizard apprentice with A-level qualifications. In the wizard qualification test, I was found to have an affinity for wood. I wonder if this is equivalent to having wood spiritual roots. Spiritual plants. I guess they can't be found in this secular world now, but you can try to use magic plants from the wizard world instead. The resources of the wizard world are very rich. There are all kinds of strange magic plants. The cultivation span of this technique is also long enough The worst acquired spiritual body, Greenwood spirit body, also needs the life tree to grow for 100 years. By that time, maybe the person will be dead. However, I heard that there are wizards who study magic plant science and pharmacy and have developed a liquid medicine to ripen magic plants. I wonder if these liquid medicines are useful for the growth of the life tree. Ronan pulled himself out of his thoughts and looked at Liu Han. In fact, Hang Meng has recorded everything in the secret book, so he doesn't need to buy this secret book. However, in order to maintain his image as a person who loves to seek immortals and is rich, and to attract more people to come and spread the news, he said, "Brother Liu, can I give you 2 taels of this secret book?" According to his understanding of the prices in this world, he knew that selling this secret book for 2 taels was already a high price. After all, the spiritual energy in the secular world is thin and resources are scarce. It is extremely difficult to practice magic power according to this ancient wood longevity skill, and spiritual plants are almost impossible to find in the secular world. For people in the secular world, this secret book is even worse than the storybooks of strange and immortal cultivation. After all, the storybooks have plots, and this secret book is all obscure language related to cultivation. 2 taels. When Liu Han heard Ronan's offer, his eyes suddenly widened, and his body trembled slightly. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately said, "Deal." Because of his excitement, the word deal was even broken. "Brother Liu, how much do you know about your ancestors? Can you tell me in detail? Money is indispensable to you." Ronan wanted to infer the whereabouts of the immortal cultivator from Liu Han's family history. When Liu Han heard about money, his face turned slightly red with excitement. Then he talked about the Liu family history he knew in a torrent of words. Ronan listened carefully, and at the same time, called out Hang Meng in his mind, asking it to record what Liu Han said so that he could check it later. Liu Han talked about the migration trajectory of the Liu family. Ronan felt that following this migration trajectory, he might be able to find clues about the immortal cultivator. Hearing one thing, Ronan suddenly interrupted Liu Han. "You just said that your ancestors left a jade pendant for your family?" Liu Han nodded. "Where is it now?" Ronan asked. He vaguely felt that the jade pendant passed down by the Liu family's ancestors might also be related to the immortal cultivation. After hearing this, Liu Han scratched his head and said with a wry smile, "One day, I pawned it to the Fuan pawn shop in the south of the city to pay off a debt." Chapter 3 Elf Tree, Wizard World, Triumph City, Small Attic. Ronan, who changed back into medieval style clothes, was looking at the jade pendant in his hand. This jade pendant was left by the ancestor of the Liu family. After knowing that the jade pendant was pawned, Ronan immediately ordered the housekeeper to redeem it. The jade pendant was green and shiny. He was afraid that the jade pendant had a connection with the immortals, so he did not examine it carefully in the world of cultivation. He did not want to attract the immortals after injecting magic power into the jade pendant. Now that he was back in the wizard world, he was relieved and concentrated on the little magic power in his body and injected it into the jade pendant. The next moment, his spirit detected a map in the jade pendant. This map was the map of the country Yu Kingdom, where he was in the world of cultivation. There was a bright spot on the map. The location of this light spot was exactly the starting point of the migration route of the Liu family ancestors mentioned by Liu Han. Could it be that there is a gathering place for people who cultivate immortals? Although he had this guess, Ronan was not in a hurry to explore there. He had to prepare first. After all, my strength is still weak. If I rashly break into an unfamiliar world of immortal cultivation, I might be in danger. Now, let's start practicing the ancient wood longevity technique. First cultivate the ancient wood longevity magic power, and then look for the magic plant. Magic plant. In the wizard world, the most famous magic plant is the elf treasure tree in the elf kingdom. It is said that the main tree of this tree is located in the center of the elf kingdom, emitting a holy glow all day long. Its roots are intertwined in various parts of the elf kingdom. Rumor has it that when the elves were the overlords of the continent, the elf treasure tree almost became the world tree. The roots and branches of this treasure tree are of great help to the cultivation of various professions. Some wizards, knights and mercenaries who live on the edge of a knife will form a team to sneak into the elf kingdom. Of course, their main purpose is to capture elves as slaves. By the way, they will also take away some roots, stems, and leaves of the elf treasure tree. However, the roots, stems, and leaves of the elf treasure tree are not cheap. I can't buy them with my current money. We can only wait for the gold coins to be sent by my family. Before that, let's cultivate the ancient wood longevity magic power. Ronan immediately sat down on the bed, followed the cultivation posture in the method, crossed his legs, and pointed his 5 hearts to the sky. Hangmeng, call up my attribute values. With Ronan's order, a stream of information appeared in his mind. Lifespan. 65 strength. 1.03 spirit. 1.4 mana. 0.6 method. Kagura meditation method. 30% for beginners. Wood meditation method. 6% for beginners. Wizard level. Level 1 wizard apprentice. There are 2 meditation methods in terms of attributes. Kagura meditation method was bought by the original body from a passing wizard. Wood meditation method was bought from a wizard apprentice at a high price after he failed the wizard qualification test. This meditation method was compiled by a high-level wizard in the Kingdom Wizard Academy after studying many wood attribute meditation methods. It is the most suitable meditation method for wood attribute affinity wizard apprentices to practice. According to the law of the kingdom, except for the academies and schools registered with the kingdom, other wizards are not allowed to teach witchcraft privately or sell wizard knowledge. In the academy, a high-level wizard once proposed that every student who obtains the academy's meditation method must sign a contract not to pass it on to others. If the contract is violated, they will be cursed and their bodies will be eroded by magic. However, most of the wizard apprentices in the academy are children of nobles. Which noble would let their children sign such a contract? Therefore, the proposal of the high-level wizard was eventually abandoned. However, due to the high price of wizard knowledge, the knowledge is still circulated in the aristocratic circle, and to a certain extent, a knowledge monopoly has been formed. Ronan practiced these 2 meditation methods successively, and his strength did not increase, but his spirit and magic power increased greatly. Ronan breathed in and out according to the practice method of ancient wood longevity gong. The energy particles in the wizard world, that is, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth mentioned in the secret book, flowed into his body from the pores all over his body like a trickle. Immediately, his attributes changed. Lifespan. 65 strength. 1.03 spirit. 1.4 mana. 0.4 skill. Ancient wood longevity skill. Entry 0%. Expand. Cultivation realm. Entry level of key refining wizard level. First level wizard apprentice. When I practiced meditation in the past, only spirit and mana showed up with arrows. Now that I practice the ancient wood longevity skill, even strength shows up with arrows. It seems that cultivation skills can not only increase mana, but also improve physical fitness. He had heard that wizard apprentices would be physically weak if they did not practice night training. Only when they were promoted to formal wizards could they cast witchcraft and use energy particles to temper their bodies. Moreover, the ancient wood longevity skills utilization efficiency of spiritual energy, that is, energy particles, is much higher than that of Kagura's meditation method and the entry-level wood meditation method. Ronan gradually gathered his thoughts and continued to practice breathing. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered his body, swirling in his danshan, forming a vortex that lasted for a long time. Gradually, a little bit of life emerged from the vortex. A month passed quietly. Under the sunlight, the capital of the kingdom, Triumph City, was surging with undercurrents, and the drama of power struggle was staged every day. Even in the Kingdom Wizard Academy, it was just another battlefield for the powerful. Ronan turned a deaf ear to the outside world and stayed in the small attic almost all day, practicing the ancient wood longevity technique. He would not go out until it was time to eat. On this day, he sat cross-legged on the bed to practice. Lifespan. 70 strength. 2.03 spirit. 2.3 mana. 1.1 technique. Ancient wood longevity technique. 1% per level. Cultivation realm. Key refining level 1 wizard level. First level wizard apprentice. The mana flowing in his body was as thick as a finger. His physique was also much stronger, and some muscle lines could be seen on his originally thin body. Knock knock knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ronan breathed a sigh of relief. A faint white gas spurted out from his mouth and nose. After breathing in and out 3 times in a row, Ronan slowly finished his practice, got off the bed, put on a pair of straw sandals, walked through the small hall, came to the door, and asked, "Who is it?" "It's Mr. Lawrence inside. You have a letter and a wooden box sent from the Redwood Territory in the Southeast Province." A man's voice sounded outside the door. "It seems that Dad's gold coins have arrived." Ronan was delighted. He had already cultivated magic power, but because he had no spiritual plants, he could not sacrifice the life tree. With his qualifications, his cultivation progress would naturally not be fast if he only relied on breathing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Now that the gold coins have arrived, he must arrange spiritual plants. Ronan excitedly opened the door and took in the letter and the wooden box. Chapter 4, The Lifelong Wood. Ronan was wearing a classical robe and a pair of straw sandals, walking leisurely on the street. On his waist, there was a cowhide purse, which was heavy with valiant gold coins. With the gold coins, he would go to buy the roots, stems, branches, and leaves of the elf treasure tree. The kingdom's decree not only prohibits the people from privately buying and selling wizard knowledge, but also prohibits the buying and selling of potion materials, spell materials and other things. However, there are still people who secretly buy and sell these things. After all, selling potion materials and spell materials has a high profit. No matter when, there will be people who take risks. Moreover, most of the forces behind the sale of potion materials and spell materials are wizard families. Even members of the royal family will participate in it. Triumph City, the capital of the Valiant Kingdom, is built on the mountain. The whole city is divided into the lower city, the middle city and the upper city from bottom to top. The lower city is at the foot of the mountain, and the dense urban buildings are like a headband, surrounding the foot of the mountain. Most of the people living there are civilians. Most of the shops and markets in the city are in the lower city. The middle city is located on the hillside. Most of the nobles and wealthy businessmen of the kingdom live there. Compared with the lower city, the middle city has better public security. Ronan's small attic is in the middle city. The upper city is where the royal family and ministers of the kingdom live. The two most eye-catching buildings in the upper city. One is in the east and the other is in the west, facing each other from a distance. In the east is the king's residence, the Glory Castle. The fortress is built with white stones emitting a faint golden glow, standing on the top of the mountain, overlooking the entire Triumph City. In the west is the wizard tower of the kingdom's legendary wizard Dolifer Augustus. The wizard tower looks black and heavy, and it is rumored to be built with obsidian. The Glory Castle is grand and tall, and the wizard tower is like a huge staff, standing above the Triumph City, pointing straight to the sky. In addition to the triumphal city, at the foot of the mountain, there is a large area of villages and markets built on the basis of the triumphal city. The east side of the royal city is close to the sea, and there are densely packed ships parked on the beach. Many fishermen eat and live on the boats, and a small market has also been formed. The triumphal city, with a population of over 1 million, is divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels from top to bottom. In the triumphal city, there are both poor people and kings, both mortals and legendary wizards. Ronan walked through the city gate and entered the lower city. Even though the people living in the lower city are not rich, they still keep the upper city and the middle city clean. His father's territory, Redwood Territory, except for the inner city, where his family lives. The other roads in the territory are very dirty. Food scraps, waste and feces can be seen everywhere on the streets. If you walk on the street, you have to wear high heels and cover your mouth and nose with cloth soaked in spices. The cleanliness of the triumphal city is due to witchcraft, architecture, and sewage system. A local middle-class noble like Ronan's father has no wizards, no craftsman proficient in architecture, and no experience in building a complete sewage system. He can only make sure that the inner city where he lives is clean and tidy. The streets are lined with shops and pedestrians are constantly coming and going. Compared with the middle city, the streets are much narrower and the crowds are denser. Ronan walked for about 10 minutes and entered a pharmacy. The sale of wizard knowledge and wizard materials is hidden in ordinary market shops. Some bookstores will secretly buy and sell meditation methods and witchcraft books. And some pharmacies will hide spellcasting materials and magic potion materials. Ronan knew about this pharmacy through an introduction. The introducer was the wizard apprentice who sold him the wood-based introductory meditation method in the Kingdom Wizard Academy. "Sir, what do you want to buy?" As soon as Ronan stepped into the pharmacy, the boss came up and asked. The boss looked to be in his 30s, with golden curly hair, fat body, and a big belly. Ronan said, "I want to buy the root of the elf treasure tree." The boss was stunned when he heard this, and then he laughed and said, "Sir, you are joking. How can I sell such things in my shop? Paul Wilson introduced me here." Ronan said. When the boss heard the name, he immediately put away the smirk and stunned expression on his face. "Okay, come here." After that, he shook his fat body, took Ronan, lifted the curtain, and walked into the room behind the shop. The room was dark, and there were 3 rows of tall medicine cabinets in it. There was a table on the side. On the table, there were scales, knives and other things. The boss said to Ronan, "Please keep an eye on whether there is anyone outside. I will come to get that thing." Ronan nodded and immediately lifted the curtain a little and kept an eye on the store. The boss set up a wooden ladder on the medicine cabinet and climbed up. As if it could not bear the weight of the boss, the wooden ladder creaked. Ronan couldn't help but look back, fearing that the boss's huge body would suddenly crush the wooden ladder and fall down. But the wooden ladder was still strong, and the boss successfully climbed to the top, opened a grid in the medicine cabinet, and took out a linen bundle from it. Then, he got off the ladder and lifted a corner of the linen, revealing a tree root about the thickness of a thumb and of varying lengths. "Is this the root of the elf treasure tree?" Ronan took a look and saw that the root of the elf treasure tree was not much different from ordinary tree roots. However, the cross-section of these roots was not necrotic, but still alive. "This is the end of the lateral root of the elf treasure tree," the boss introduced. "It is distributed at the edge of the elf kingdom, and is relatively easy to obtain. Its medicinal effect is naturally not as good as the main root of the elf treasure tree, but it is not something that ordinary wizards and mercenaries can obtain." Ronan thought to himself, "Anyway, this is part of the elf treasure tree. According to the ancient wood longevity art, the growth potential of the lifelong tree has nothing to do with which part of the spiritual plant, but is related to the variety of the spiritual plant." So, he asked the boss for the price. The boss asked Ronan how long he wanted. Ronan thought about it and only asked for the length of a thumb. Immediately, the boss picked up a silver knife with complex patterns on the table and cut off about the length of an adult's thumb at the end of the root. Then, he put it on the scale to weigh it. After paying the money, Ronan put the small piece of the root in his waist bag and took it back to the small attic. After locking the door and sitting on the bed, he took out the root from his waist bag. "Finally, I can offer sacrifices to the destiny immortality tree. According to the ancient wood immortality technique, if you obtain a whole spiritual plant, you can directly offer sacrifices to it and make it into the destiny immortality tree. If you obtain part of a spiritual plant, you can first offer sacrifices to it and make it into the destiny immortality wood, and then let it grow into the destiny immortality tree." Ronan gathered his thoughts, poured the ancient wood immortality magic power into the tree roots, and offered sacrifices according to the method of the ancient wood immortality technique. The tree roots immediately generated a suction force, absorbing energy particles. At the same time, a strange feeling arose in Ronan's body. He seemed to have established a vague connection with the roots of the elf treasure tree. As he offered sacrifices, this feeling became stronger and stronger. Ronan concentrated on offering sacrifices, and he didn't know how long it had been. At this time, there were lines like talismans in the roots of the elf treasure tree. A vigorous vitality was hidden in it. Suddenly, Ronan's mind was shocked. He felt that he had established a very real connection with the tree roots in his hand. "It's done." According to the ancient wood longevity technique, when you feel that you are connected to the spiritual plant part, the spiritual plant part will be completely transformed into the longevity wood. With a little cultivation, it can become the longevity tree. Ronan felt that this small piece of tree roots was constantly absorbing the energy particles around it. Part of it was used to grow itself, and the other part was fed back to his body and became part of the Danshan magic power. Chapter 5. The Undead Society. The second level of key refining. Hangmeng. Call up my stats. Lifespan. 70 strength. 2.03 spirit. 2.3 mana. 1.1 skill. Ancient wood longevity skill. 1% per level. Cultivation realm. Key refining level 1 wizard level. Level 1 wizard apprentice. Ronan was not practicing, but an upward arrow still appeared after the stats. It seems that with the immortal wood, I can practice, even if I'm idle. If I practice again, the speed of attribute improvement will be even faster. Ronan put the small piece of immortal wood back into his waist bag. According to the ancient wood longevity skill, if the immortal wood grows fine roots, it can be planted in the soil. In this way, it can absorb more spiritual energy from heaven and earth. The selection of soil and the acquisition of ripening potions must be put on the agenda. I have AI, and I can study magical plants and pharmacy by myself. It's just that wizard knowledge is strictly controlled. It's not like in the past life, where you can get a lot of knowledge in the library and on the internet. I wonder if Paul has any way. Knock knock knock. Half a month later, Ronan was sitting cross-legged on the bed practicing, and suddenly someone knocked on the door. Who? Ronan asked after he finished his practice. It's me, Paul. A man's voice came from outside the door. Squeak. Ronan got off the bed, walked through the living room, and opened the door. Outside the door was a man with brown curly hair, about his age. He was tall and thin, with light freckles on both cheeks. This was Paul Wilson. Ronan met him during the qualification test of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. After the test, Ronan failed with a qualification of C lower, while Paul entered the academy with the qualification of A middle. Paul is a poor nobleman. His family does not have enough money to support his wizard training. So, this guy started to make money in a side way. Hey, Ronan. After Paul greeted him, Ronan let him in and locked the door. Ronan, how is your training these days? I heard that you bought a piece of elf treasure tree root. Paul asked after entering the house. It's normal. Ronan sighed. In fact, with the assistance of the natal immortal wood, his magic power is not weak. But Paul can't feel it. The magic power of the ancient wood is close to the nature of heaven and earth. If it is not deliberately revealed, it is difficult for others to feel it. Unlike those high-level wizards, if they don't deliberately conceal it, the magic power radiating from their bodies is as fierce as the sun. Even Paul in front of him, although he is only a first-level wizard apprentice, Ronan can feel a sense of magic oppression on him. It's okay. Paul patted Ronan on the shoulder, and then his expression was slightly solemn. Have other people come to you these days? No. What happened? Ronan asked. That's good. Paul breathed a sigh of relief and found a chair to sit down. Recently, an organization called the Necromancer Society has emerged in the royal capital. Many people who failed the wizard qualification test were found by them. The Black Wizards of the Necromancer Society claim that, as long as you join them and practice necromancy, you can gain more powerful power than practicing in the academy. Maybe they are not lying. However, practicing necromancy will definitely come at an extremely heavy price. Some necromancers, although they have gained powerful powers, will lose their flesh and blood and become a skeleton. Ronan, although I know you desire power, you don't want to become a skeleton, do you? If they come to you in the future, you must never agree. As he said that, Paul's eyes swept across Ronan's room, opened the wine jug on the table, and sniffed. Why is there no wine, fruits, or pastries in your room? You don't look like a noble at all. Suddenly, he looked at Ronan. You're not going to use money to buy witchcraft, are you? Why didn't you come to me? Maybe you think my witchcraft book is too expensive? But you have to know that the witchcraft in the academy cannot be compared with those on the black market. While Paul was chattering, Ronan also sat down on the chair, picked up the wine jug, poured the lavender wine into the glass, and took a big sip. I didn't buy witchcraft, but I do need your help with something. Ronan licked the wine on his lips and put down the glass. I want to study magical herbology and alchemy. I wonder if you can help me find a teacher. Oh. Paul raised his eyebrows. Your wizard aptitude is not good. Studying magical herbology and alchemy can indeed go further on the path of wizarding. However, once you encounter a step That requires casting a spell. You have to find other wizards to cooperate with, which is a bit restrictive. But, you can also come to me. I won't charge you too much. Ronan waved his hand to stop Paul from continuing. Okay, I get it. Then do you have a teacher to introduce to me? Paul dug his ears. I'll ask around in the academy to see which wizard wants to make extra money. If I find one, I'll contact you. After another glance at the room, Paul stood up. Okay, Ronan, I'm leaving. If you want to treat me to a glass of newly brewed mead from the Wild Beer Bar, I'll be happy to accompany you. Next time. Ronan said, I will invite you when you find me a teacher for potions and pharmacy. Paul waved his hand, opened the door and walked out. Ronan's eyes moved back from the door, thinking to himself. The Undead Society. Why didn't they come to me? Do they think my qualifications are too low? This Undead Society is really damned. Although he was lucky not to be found by this organization, Ronan felt a little uncomfortable. After taking another sip of the slightly sour light wine, Ronan sat on the bed again and took a training posture. The energy particles in the wizard world, that is, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth mentioned in the exercises, gathered towards his body. I'm about to break through. After practicing for half a month, with the help of the birth longevity wood, he will break through the second level of key refining. About half a minute later, the green and lively longevity magic power in Ronan's Danshan suddenly shook. Then, a burst of vitality burst out from his Danshan and traveled throughout his body. Not only did he feel refreshed mentally, but his body also gained some strength. He immediately called out Hang Meng and analyzed himself. Lifespan. 75 strength. 2.9 spirit. 3.4 mana. 2.2 gong for ancient wood longevity gong. 51% for the first level. Cultivation realm. Second level of key refining wizard level. First level wizard apprentice. His realm reached the second level of key refining. His lifespan was extended by 5 years, and his strength, spirit, and mana were all increased. He looked inward at his Danshan, watching the mana that had grown a lot, and thought to himself, now, my mana is not less, I should be able to cast low-level witchcraft. However, I want to see how powerful the spells in the world of cultivation are. I wonder if Guanfu has heard any news about spells in the world of cultivation? Chapter 6, The Old Talisman Book. Young Master is out. Welcome, young master. Ronan, wearing a green robe and a crown on his head, stepped out of the courtyard. As usual, 12 delicate maids had already greeted him respectfully and bowed to him. Young master. The housekeeper Guanfu walked over quickly and bowed. Ronan nodded slightly and asked, have you heard anything about cultivating immortals or magic recently? Guanfu shook his head. I'm disappointed, young master. I still haven't heard any news. However, I found a book that is somewhat related to magic in a bookstore in the east of the city. Oh, what is it? Ronan's eyes lit up, and he became interested. It's a book that teaches people to draw talismans. Guanfu said, the content inside is quite detailed, with the steps to make talismans and the techniques of drawing talismans. However, I heard that the store owner had tried to draw talismans according to this talisman. The talismans drawn are just beautiful, but useless. If you are interested, I can show it to you. Then show it to me. Ronan said immediately. He thought that, although there were some fake talisman books circulating among the people, this talisman book might be the real thing. He couldn't draw a talisman according to the book, probably because the spiritual energy here was too thin to form a talisman. Not long after, Guanfu presented the talisman book. Ronan took it and looked at it. The talisman book looked very old, and there were traces of insects on it. Just looking at the appearance, one would think it was a fake. After all, according to the novels he had read in his previous life, if it was a real secret book, the material would not be bad, and it might even be invulnerable to water and fire. The book was very thin, and Ronan estimated that it would not exceed 20 pages. He opened the yellowed cover. On the first page was a drawing method for a talisman. In the middle of the rectangular box, there was a string of indescribable strokes like a dragon and a snake. Next to the talisman, the 3 words talisman were written. Starting from the second page, the choice of talismans, talisman ink, talisman pens, and the brushwork of drawing talismans were recorded. Each step was quite detailed. Ronan read it, while summoning Hang Meng to analyze everything in the record book. After a while, Ronan flipped through the talisman book. There were 3 types of talismans in the talisman book. Amulet for protection, light body talisman, and talisman for warding off evil spirits. You can leave now. You are not allowed to enter the courtyard without my order. After leaving a word, Ronan turned around and walked into the moon gate. Cakesedan City, small attic, bathroom. Ronan's figure suddenly appeared in it. He walked out of the bathroom and sat at the desk. He summoned Hang Meng and recalled everything in the talisman book. The talisman book was left in the world of cultivation by him and was not brought here. But all the contents of the talisman book were recorded by Hang Meng. According to the talisman book, to draw a talisman, you must first choose talisman paper. The more expensive the paper used as talisman paper, the more powerful the talisman will be. But the talisman book did not explain the principle. Then, it is time to choose the ink for the talisman. The talisman book says that the blood of animals such as chicken blood and pig blood, mixed with cinnabar, can become the ink for the talisman. The more expensive the animal blood, the more powerful the talisman. For example, the power of cow blood is greater than that of pig blood, and the talisman drawn with tiger blood is even more powerful. The choice of talisman pen is similar to the choice of talisman paper and talisman ink. The more expensive the animal hair at the tip of the pen, the more powerful the talisman drawn. The talismans drawn by talisman pens made of wolf hair, sheep hair, rabbit hair, and rat whiskers have different powers. Finally, it is the brushwork of drawing talismans. Talisman paper, talisman ink, and talisman pen are all external objects and are easier to control. The brushwork is the key to whether the talisman can be drawn successfully, and it is the most complicated and tedious content in the talisman book. According to the process of drawing talismans, the brushwork is divided into the ceremony of drawing talismans, the choice of time, the mobilization of mana, the length of the strokes, etc. Guan Fu said that the bookstore owner drew the talisman according to this talisman book, but that owner is definitely lying. It is unlikely that the owner will follow this process wholeheartedly and without any difference. Besides, it is impossible for the owner to mobilize his magic power. Ronan thought about it and decided to test the authenticity of this talisman book. Although there are magic beasts in the wizard world, using their blood as talisman ink and their hair as talisman pens should make the talismans more powerful. However, the sale of magic beast materials among the people is prohibited by the royal family. In addition, hunting magic beasts is quite dangerous, and the price of magic beast blood is not cheap. Ronan's money will also be used to open up a path in the world of cultivation, and to study magic plant science and pharmacy in the future, so naturally he will save as much as possible. Besides, this is just an attempt, and magic beast blood is not needed. So, he planned to draw talismans with chicken blood according to the talisman book. But there is no such thing as a brush in this world. Thinking of this, Ronan went back to the world of immortal cultivation, and brought back a wolf hair brush. Then, he went to the market, and bought a chicken and a box of cinnabar. In this world, cinnabar is the pigment of painters, and it often adds a touch of bright colors to their paintings. After returning to the attic, Ronan cut the wallpaper into the size of the talisman paper in the talisman book. Then, according to the instructions of the talisman book, after completing the ceremony, he cut the chicken's throat amid the chicken's screams. The chicken's blood spilled into the copper wine glass. Ronan poured a little cinnabar into it and stirred it with a wolf hair brush. After the chicken blood and cinnabar were mixed, Ronan lifted the wolf hair brush from the talisman ink, used his magic power, and slowly moved the brush on the cut parchment. What he wanted to draw was the first kind of talisman in the talisman book, the amulet. At the moment, when the tip of the talisman pen touched the talisman paper, Ronan felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the tip of the talisman pen gathered around the tip of the pen. This talisman book is real. Ronan was delighted. Just as his mood fluctuated slightly, a flash of fire immediately appeared at the end of the talisman stroke. Then, a small charred hole was burned on the parchment. The smell of burning rose. Damn it. Ronan crumpled the scrapped parchment into a ball and threw it aside. He took a deep breath, cleared his mind and calmed his mind. He wrote again. As the magic power flowed, it once again connected the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and gathered towards the tip of the pen. The deep red strokes slowly moved on the parchment. Ronan calmed down and concentrated his mind. His brushwork was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, sometimes heavy and sometimes elegant. While he was drawing, he used AI Hangmeng to adjust his brushwork. Gradually, the talisman head, talisman core, and talisman foot took shape one by one. Finally, Ronan hooked the brush. At the end of the talisman stroke, there was a flash of inspiration. It's done. Ronan exhaled lightly and put the wolf hair brush aside. Summon Hangmeng and adjust his own values. Lifespan 75 strength, 2.9 spirit, 3.4 mana, 2.2 kung fu, ancient wood longevity kung fu, first level 51%, skills, amulet, beginner 1%, cultivation realm, key refining level 2 wizard level, first level wizard apprentice. Chapter 7 Druid. Ronan picked up the amulet and decided to test its power. He used his magic power to inject it into the amulet. Suddenly, the amulet began to burn. A force burst out from the amulet and enveloped his body. The next moment, Ronan's body was covered with a thin film of spiritual energy. He felt his feet slightly floating. It seemed that there was a force holding the soles of his shoes slightly away from the ground. Ronan opened his two palms and pressed them towards the middle. When the two palms were about 3 fingers apart, a force prevented the two palms from touching. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't counteract this force. He walked to the dining table, picked up a table knife, and slowly stabbed it into the palm of his left hand. However, he felt that the table knife was blocked by a force, and the tip of the knife could not touch the skin at all. He carefully and slowly increased his strength. Until he used all his strength, he still couldn't stab it down. This amulet is really good. Ronan admired in his heart. After adding the amulet, he could completely crush himself without the amulet. This means that, after using the amulet, he might be able to defeat the beginner Night Squire. Besides, this is just the amulet I just drew. According to the amulet book, as the skill of drawing a talisman improves, not only will the time of drawing a talisman be shorter and the success rate be higher, but the power of the talisman will also be greater. Ronan followed the instructions in the talisman book and made a seal with his right hand. A slight pop sounded, and the aura membrane around him suddenly turned into a breeze and scattered. His body sank slightly, and the soles of his shoes touched the ground again. With this amulet, I finally have some power to protect myself in this extraordinary world. Although there are kingdom guards to maintain law and order in Triumph City, but there are always accidents, and sometimes you have to rely on yourself. Ronan was about to continue drawing the talisman when he suddenly remembered the witchcraft scroll in the wizard world. This witchcraft scroll is quite similar to a talisman. The wizard stores the witchcraft on the scroll. Using the witchcraft scroll, he can cast witchcraft with less mana and faster speed. However, the witchcraft scroll is different from the talisman and cannot be cast instantly. Ronan even heard that some witchcraft scrolls require the wizard to chant for a long time before they can be activated. After thinking for a while, Ronan collected his mind and continued to draw the talisman. Half a month passed before he knew it. During this time, Ronan practiced, drew talismans, ate, and slept. Every day was extremely fulfilling. When Ronan came to Triumph City with the caravan, he passed through several territories. Along the way, several noble children joined the caravan one after another. These noble children, like him, failed the wizard qualification test in the academy, but they did not return to their family territories, but stayed in Triumph City. After all, the cleanliness and luxury of Triumph City are incomparable to their territories. Beautiful women, fine wine, fruits, and a pleasant climate made them linger. One or two noble sons who were familiar with Ronan knew that a new girl had come to the Fengai Club in Cakesuan City, and they would come to inform Ronan from time to time. But Ronan was busy refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so he rejected them. After being rejected several times, the frequency of these noble sons coming to Ronan gradually decreased. One day, Ronan was practicing, and suddenly felt that the mana in his body was growing faster than before. He was connected with the motherhood wood, and immediately felt that the motherhood wood had grown much stronger. The speed of absorbing and refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was faster. It seems to have started to take root. He immediately untied his waste bag and poured out the small piece of motherhood wood, only to see that the small piece of motherhood wood had grown thin roots. After taking root, it can be planted in the soil. Ronan immediately put the Benming Changsheng wood into his waste bag, put on his clothes, went out, bought a flower pot and tools for planting flowers. He used a shovel to loosen the soil, and then buried the Benming Changsheng wood in it. Immediately, he felt the roots of the Benming Changsheng wood slowly extending in the soil. More spiritual energy from heaven and earth gathered at the Benming Changsheng wood. At the same time, more magic power was generated in his body. Sure enough, after being planted in the soil, the speed at which the Benming Changsheng would refine the spiritual energy from heaven and earth became faster. The study of magic plant science and pharmacy can be put on the agenda. But why hasn't Paul come to me yet? Don't you want the introduction fee? Ronan muttered in his heart, leaving the Benming Changsheng wood in the flower pot and going out. His connection with the Benming Changsheng wood is very mysterious. He had tried it before. Not to mention the great distance between them. Even if they were separated by the wizard world and the immortal world, some of the spiritual energy refined by his innate longevity power could still be fed back to him without missing a single detail. Now that the innate longevity tree has not grown yet, it will not attract attention if it is left in the flower pot. As it was getting close to evening, Ronan knew that Paul should have come out of the Kingdom Wizard Academy in the upper city and returned to his residence in the lower city. Paul, a poor nobleman, felt quite stressed even to rent a house in the middle city, so he could only live in the lower city. Although he made a lot of money from side jobs, wizard teaching, buying potions, etc. were very expensive. This often made him short of money. However, whenever he walked back to the lower city from the upper city, he would always pass by the wild beer bar in the middle city. He would drink a glass of newly brewed fruit wine there, and by the way, inquire about the news of Triumph City to see if there were any new ways to make money. Ronan walked into the tavern, smelling the aroma of wine and ale, and looked past a few couples hugging and flirting, and saw Paul sitting in a corner, peeking at other couples flirting with a depressed look on his face. Soon, Paul also saw Ronan. Ronan walked up and sat next to Paul. He spread a few valiant copper coins on the long wine table and said to the waiter beside him, 2 cups of mead, 2 plates of honey glazed venison, and a plate of truffle cake. Hearing Ronan ordering food, including his portion, Paul's eyes lit up, and he nodded slightly. Dear Ronan, long time no see. Did you come to see me on purpose? Ronan didn't talk to Paul about anything else and immediately said, have you found my magic plant and potion teacher? After hearing this, the light on Paul's face dimmed slightly, and then he lowered his voice. You know, private teaching is prohibited by the kingdom's decree. The professors in the academy are also very tight-lipped. I dare not test them casually, for fear of getting you involved. But if you are in a hurry, I know someone who can teach you magic plant science. Who? Ronan's eyes lit up. A druid, a female druid. Paul replied, which other school is more familiar with plants than druids? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, Introduction to Magical Plant Science. However, this druid is too young. She is only 21 years old and has no teaching experience. Paul answered while stuffing pastries into his mouth. Her wizard level is not high either. She is just a 3rd level wizard apprentice. Besides, teaching is not her job. She also needs to take care of magic plants for others. If you go to her to learn, a week is not a long time to learn. You'd better take me to her. Ronan thought that, although this druid was young and her attainments in magic plants were not very high, she should be able to get him started. After he got started, with the help of Han Meng, wouldn't it be easy to study magic plants? Moreover, it's good that this druid wizard level is not high, so it's difficult to see through his cultivation. Okay, Paul muttered while holding the food. Then we have to eat quickly. This druid also lives in the middle city. We have to end our meeting with her before curfew. Otherwise, after curfew, the gate to the lower city will be blocked, and I can only live in your house. Night fell and the stars emerged. Triumph City is like a giant beast, crawling into the starry sky. Ronan and Paul walked quickly on the street, burping from time to time, feeling the cakes and fruit wine they had just eaten sloshing in their stomachs. The timekeeping in the wizarding world is very similar to that in the previous life, also 24 hours a day. The curfew in Triumph City is at 9 o'clock in the evening. If you are still wandering on the street at 9 o'clock and are discovered by the Capitol guards, you will be fined a high price. The curfew in Triumph City is not only to prevent crimes by dark wizards, cultists, assassins and other uneasy element who like to move at night. It is also to prevent drunk wizards and knights from fighting in the street and affecting the public. After walking for about half a minute, Paul stopped at a bungalow. In front of them was a round wooden door with wooden textures on it, like ripples on water. I forgot to tell you that the name of this female druid is Arwendrell. After saying this, Paul held the copper ring on the door and knocked on the door. Ms. Drell, I'm Paul Wilson, requesting to see you. After a while, a magnetic female voice came from the door. Come in. The door opened with a creak. However, there was no one behind the door. Ronan saw a green vine retracted from behind the door handle, like a human hand, shrinking onto a potted plant. He turned his eyes back and looked at the whole room. The room was not spacious. Every corner was filled with various potted plants, leaving only a small space. In this space, there was a red blanket, on which there was a single sofa, a rocking chair and a three-legged round table. On the round table was a large black wine jug, a plate of bright red cherries and a copper high-foot wine glass. Ronan didn't recognize any of the potted plants. Next to the potted plants, there were thick white candles burning, emitting soft light. The plants seemed to have life, moving slightly under the candlelight. The shadows on the wall stretched from time to time. Mr. Wilson, what do you want to talk to me about? Who is that person next to you? Ronan and Paul suddenly heard the magnetic female voice coming from a corner. Ronan looked at that corner and saw that there were only a few potted plants in the corner and no one at all. But the next moment, the shadow of the potted plants on the wall stretched slightly. Then, a black cat's head poked out from behind the potted plants. The black cat had a pair of brown eyes, flashing with spiritual light, and looked at Ronan and Paul with a sharp gaze. Ms. Dreer. Paul put his left hand on his right chest and bowed slightly. Ronan knew that this was a druid, and when he saw this black cat, he had a guess in his heart. After seeing Paul salute, he also saluted. The action of saluting came from the muscle memory of his original body as a noble. Paul bowed and said, "This is Ronan Lawrence, son of Baron Lawrence of the Southeast Province. He wants to learn magic plant science from you." The black cat's left beard moved. "I don't have time recently, and I have a lot of magic plants to take care of. I'll pay the tuition, 1 Valent gold coin per hour." Ronan said immediately, "This price is only a little less than the tuition for wizard apprentices at the Kingdom Wizard Academy." The black cat was still for a moment and suddenly said, "Mr. Lawrence, since you love plants, you are a friend of our druids, and I should treat you as a friend. If you don't understand magic plant science, I will do my best to teach you." As he said, he walked out from behind the potted plants with elegant and light steps. He shook his body and jumped onto the single sofa. He got into a ball of linen on the sofa. Just as the black cat got into the linen was quickly propped up. Ronan saw that this inconspicuous ball of linen was actually a simple one-piece dress. Then, a woman who was almost as tall as Ronan stood up from the sofa. This was the true appearance of the female druid Arwendrell. Her skin was wheat-colored, and her brown eyes were large and bright. Her chest was bulging, holding up her linen dress. Her back was very curved, round like a pair of crescent moons. A pair of slender and tight thighs were revealed from under the dress. A slightly curly brownish black hair fell behind her like a waterfall. "I was practicing witchcraft just now, and I didn't know you were here. Please forgive me for not showing my true face to you when we first met," Arwen said. "Ms. Drell, don't take it to heart," Ronan replied. "I wonder if Mr. Lawrence is free at 4 PM on Monday and Wednesday?" Arwen asked. "Yes. Then how about setting the magic plant study in those 2 time periods?" "Okay." Ding ding ding, the melodious bell sounded in the Triumph City. This is the curfew bell of Triumph City. The first bell rings, which means there is still a quarter of an hour before curfew. Just now, Ronan and Paul left Abin's residence and parted ways. Hearing the bell, Ronan quickened his pace and walked back to the small attic. Monday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Ronan sat on the single sofa, and Abin lay in the rocking chair. The two sat opposite each other. Abin was wearing a green one-piece dress, which was loose, but still couldn't hide her curves. "Mr. Lawrence, let's get started." "Yes." For the next 2 hours, Abin explained the introductory knowledge of magic plant science to Ronan. Ronan not only listened himself, but the AI Hang Meng in his mind was also constantly analyzing and recording. He secretly gave Hang Meng an order and adjusted his own value. Magic plant science, entry 2%. After talking about magic plant science for a while, Abin taught Ronan a druid spell, growth. This spell is a first level spell that can promote plant growth. It is relatively easy for wizard apprentices to cast. Chapter 9, Light Body Talisman. Ronan returned to the attic and immediately released his spiritual consciousness towards the natal wood buried in the soil. With his cultivation level of the second level of key refining and a spiritual power of 3.4, his spiritual consciousness could only extend 1 meter outside his body. The invisible spiritual consciousness passed through the air, passed through the potted plant in the soil, and wrapped around the natal wood. Ronan carefully examined the structure and growth status of the natal wood. According to Abin's teaching, if you want to promote plant growth, you must first understand the structure and growth status of the plant, and then use the growth technique on the plant in a targeted manner. With the assistance of Hang Meng, an advanced AI, Ronan understood the structure and growth status of the natal wood, and then placed his right hand on the potted plant. He chanted a spell. He had just started the growth technique, and had not yet built a witchcraft model, so he could not cast it instantly, and could only cast it through chanting. After chanting for a while, a magical power gradually came out of his hand, and wrapped around the natal wood. The wood attributed energy particles in the air, flowed and gathered towards the natal immortal wood. A few strands of green light shone through the soil. Hang Meng analyzed the natal immortal wood. As soon as Ronan gave the order, a stream of information appeared in his mind. Spiritual plant, natal immortal wood age. 0.6. Under the effect of the growth technique, the age of the natal immortal wood gradually increased. However, Ronan also felt that his mana was draining away very quickly. He didn't know if it was because the original body of the natal immortal wood was the root of the elf treasure tree. The elf treasure tree is a sacred tree, and the energy required for its growth must be much more than that of ordinary magic plants. Therefore, if the natal immortal wood is to grow, it will take more growth magic. After an hour, Ronan sat down on the chair dejectedly. The age of the natal immortal wood increased by 0.1, and his mana and physical strength were almost exhausted. He poured himself a full glass of wine, and drank it in big gulps. Then, he forced himself to sit cross-legged on the bed, with his 5 hearts facing the sky, and began to practice the ancient wood longevity technique. In addition to his own recovery, the natal longevity wood was also constantly refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, restoring his mana and physical strength. After the mana was fully restored, he used the breeding technique on the natal longevity wood. Spiritual plant, natal longevity wood year. 0.7. The natal longevity wood is growing. At the same time, he also let Hang Meng adjust his own attributes. Lifespan. 75 strength. 3.0 spirit. 3.5 mana. 2.3 skill, ancient wood longevity skill, first level 54%, talisman, amulet, entry 1%, witchcraft, growth skill, entry 10%, knowledge, magic plant science, entry 6%, cultivation realm, second level of key refining wizard. Level, first level wizard apprentice. The process of performing the growth skill on the natal longevity wood is also the process of practicing the growth skill and magic plant science. Therefore, the progress of the cultivation of the growth skill and magic plant science has increased. After performing the growth skill for the 3rd time, Ronan sat down on the wooden chair again. He poured the last drop of wine from the wine jug into the wine glass. Then, he gulped a few times and drank all the wine. Just at this moment, his stomach and intestines moved, and a gurgling sound came from his belly. He tried his best to cast spells many times and was very hungry. But now it was curfew and he couldn't go out at all. Fortunately, he still had chickens in his kitchen for drawing talismans. In addition, there were also seasonings such as wine, rosemary, olive oil, etc. He planned to make a great roast chicken to comfort himself. While Ronan was studying magic plant science and growing his lifelong wood, he did not give up the skill of drawing talismans. He would set aside time every day to draw talismans. Logically speaking, with his current level, the success rate of drawing talismans was not 100%. However, when he was drawing talismans, he had the help of Han Meng. While he was drawing talismans, he ordered Han Meng to remind him of mistakes in time. As long as he was focused, he would always react in time and correct the mistakes when they were about to happen. So, since the first time he failed to draw a talisman due to his unstable state of mind, he has never failed since then. Amulet, proficiency 1%. Just after Ronan drew 100 amulets, the proficiency of this talisman finally reached the level of proficiency. Compared to the beginning of drawing talismans, he was drawing talismans faster at this time. The protective power generated by the talisman is also stronger. Ronan put the 10 talismans he drew this time into a leather bag and neatly stacked them together with the amulets he drew before. If I use all these 100 talismans at the same time, I'm afraid I can withstand the attack of a formal knight, Ronan thought as he tied the leather bag. After upgrading the amulet to proficient, Ronan wanted to practice the light body talisman. He picked up the wolf hair brush and dipped it in the talisman ink mixed with chicken blood and cinnabar. After the ink at the tip of the brush was full enough, he wrote solemnly. On the talisman paper cut from parchment, the brush moved like a dragon. With the experience of proficient amulets, although he was drawing the light body talisman for the first time, he did not feel unfamiliar, but instead had a sense of momentum. Soon, he lifted the tip of his pen on the talisman paper. Immediately, a flash of light flashed at the end of the talisman foot. The talisman is done. Ronan summoned Han Meng and checked his attributes. Light body talisman, 1% for beginners. It's much faster to get started with this light body talisman than with the amulet. It seems that learning similar knowledge is conducive to the rapid improvement of proficiency. After drawing the light body talisman, Ronan picked it up and injected a trace of mana. The light body talisman ignited without fire. A force shot out from the light body talisman and instantly enveloped his body. Ronan felt his body become lighter. Then, he took a step and jogged around in his narrow attic. Even if it's a jog, it's much faster than usual. Ronan could feel a little wind pressure on his face. After running for a while, he stopped. Because the mana of the light body talisman has dissipated. Hoo. Ronan panted slightly after running for a while. Fortunately, practicing the ancient wood longevity technique and the feedback from my natal longevity would have improved my physique. If I had the physique of an ordinary person before, I would probably be lying on the ground now. Ronan thought as he picked up a large wine pot that was 2 palms high and poured wine into his mouth. He put the large wine pot back on the table only after he had drunk enough. Then, he continued to draw talismans. He was going to go to the location on the jade pendant of the Liu family's ancestors to investigate the place of cultivation, so he had to prepare well. A large number of amulets and light amulets were his reliance to protect himself. He planned to improve his proficiency in amulets and light amulets as much as possible in the wizard world. If he drew more of these 2 types of talismans, he might be able to deal with danger. Chapter 10 Storage Magical Device. Amulet, Mastery 1%. I have finally reached mastery. Ronan sighed and put the newly drawn amulet into the leather bag. I should have more than 500 amulets. He looked at the 2 bulging leather bags. More than 500 amulets were placed in them, and his waist bag was stuffed with a dozen newly drawn amulets, which could be used if he encountered danger. He glanced at another leather bag. This leather bag contained about 100 light body amulets. Ronan's eyes moved away from the 3 bloated leather bags and he couldn't help but sigh. Although he had enough amulets, carrying these 3 leather bags seemed too cumbersome. Let's buy a magic tool that can store things, but I don't know how much it costs. After having this idea, Ronan planned to meet Paul, Midtown, Wild Beer Bar. What? You want to buy a storage magic device? Paul was surprised after hearing Ronan's words. "What are you going to buy it for?" "Don't ask me what I'm going to buy it for first. Just tell me how much you want it for," Ronan said. "A sky-high price." Paul took a sip of honey wine. "If you want to make a storage magic device, you need at least a formal wizard who is proficient in space magic to help cast the spell. Even the worst storage ring, which only has a quarter of a cubic meter of storage space, will cost 3,000 Varen gold coins." 3,000. Ronan fell into deep thought after asking about the price. 3,000 Varen gold coins. Although his father could afford it, it was a large sum of money and might not give it to him. After all, he was not the only son in the family. He had an older brother who was already a silver knight at the age of 20. The most important thing was that his older brother had excellent military ability. When he was 16 years old, he trained a militia in the territory from scratch into an elite force and led it to participate in the suppression of the rebellion in the southeast province. He also made great contributions in suppressing the rebellion and became one of the most dazzling young elites in the southeast province. Wizard qualification is a talent, and training and deploying troops is also a talent. This talent is equally precious in the kingdom. His father spends a lot of money on his eldest brother every year. Knight training, military training, noble communication, all of these require a lot of money. He also has a 13-year-old brother. He has an excellent knight talent. At this age, he is already the peak of the Bronze Knight. This kind of talent, not to mention the Southeast Province, can be among the best in the entire Kingdom of Valant. Although wizards are superior to everyone, knights are still a force that cannot be ignored. It is common for knights to wear enchanted armor, hold enchanted weapons, ride on monsters, and kill wizards alone. What's more, if the knight's body has been transformed by witchcraft, he can gain stronger physical strength. His father also has high hopes for his younger brother. He was looking forward to his brother being able to stand out among the knights in the Valant Knight tournament in the future. Therefore, his father also spent a lot of money on his brother every year. In addition, in order to deal with emergencies such as disasters and riots, his father also had to leave a certain amount of money in his treasury. Ronan's thoughts were racing. He felt that he could only ask his father for 500 Valant gold coins, based on his lie of entering the Kingdom Wizard Academy. Of course, this still depended on his family not discovering his lie. While it has not been discovered by my father, I will write a letter home and ask for more money, Ronan thought. Although he lied, the money he asked for was indeed used to improve his strength. In the future, he will definitely give back to the family. However, he could not tell others about his travel through the world of immortal cultivation. As for the rest of the money, I can only earn it myself. But how can I make money? Thinking of this, Ronan couldn't help but look at Paul. Paul is a good money maker. But Paul can make money because he is a wizard apprentice at the Kingdom Wizard Academy, and he has contact with many people from all walks of life, so he can act as an intermediary. But he is just a failed wizard and a middle-class noble son of a province with few resources. However, I can make money through Paul. Ronan thought of making potions. With Han Meng, an advanced AI, he must have made rapid progress in studying pharmacy and making potions. Paul, when will I be arranged to study pharmacy? Ronan asked. I heard that there is a professor in the academy who teaches privately. Paul put a piece of honey roasted venison into his mouth, chewing it and saying, however, this professor did not teach the introductory knowledge. If you go to his private class, you may not understand it. However, come here every afternoon at this time, and I will write down some introductory knowledge of pharmacy in the academy library, and then come here to teach you. 30 Valant copper coins for each knowledge imparted. Ronan agreed. Ronan's learning ability made Paul dumbfounded. Every time Paul passed on the introductory knowledge of pharmacy, Ronan could always remember and digest it quickly. After only 5 days, Ronan had mastered the introductory knowledge of pharmacy and reached the threshold of attending private lessons at the professor's place. So Paul arranged for Ronan to attend the professor's class. Paul didn't know the true identity of the professor. He learned about the professor's private teaching through a 3rd level wizard apprentice in the academy, who was also the middleman of the professor. The location of the class was secretly chosen in a manor outside the City of Triumph. When entering the manor, there was a person wearing a white robe, a white hood, and a white mask, who received the visitors and collected the teaching fee from each visitor. At this time, Ronan was wearing a golden mask, a black robe covering his whole body, and a black hood. The people who entered the manor with him concealed their identities. After all, privately studying wizard knowledge is a violation of the kingdom's decree, and no one would come in with their own face. After entering the hall, they saw 200 desks placed in the spacious hall, which was a spectacular sight. The professor's private lesson fee is the same as that in the Wizard Academy, but he teaches nearly 200 people at the same time. Private lessons are also profitable. Ronan thought as he looked at the scene. He wanted to teach private lessons and make money. After he finished his studies, Ronan walked to a desk in the middle row and sat down. As time passed, people wearing various robes and masks came one after another, and the desks gradually filled up. After a while, the man who collected money in the manor, wearing a white robe, a white hood, and a white mask, walked into the hall and walked straight to the podium. "Everyone, the class will start now." A hoarse voice came out of this person's mouth. Ronan's mouth twitched slightly. It turned out that the professor was also responsible for collecting money and guarding the door himself. Chapter 11 Primary Meditation Potion. Pharmacy, 63% for beginners. 2 weeks passed before he knew it. According to the professor's schedule of 3 classes a week, Ronan had attended 6 classes. He felt that he needed to find a prescription to practice. So, he went to the Wild Beer Bar and found Paul, asking Paul to get him a prescription and a set of medicine making equipment. Because he planned to make money by making medicine, he asked Paul to get him a formula for a primary meditation potion. The primary meditation potion is for wizard apprentices. After taking it, the progress of practicing meditation will be accelerated. Primary meditation potion? Paul was drinking fruit wine. His eyes were a little hazy, and when he heard this, his eyes lit up immediately. "If you can make a primary meditation potion, I can help you sell the extra part." "Okay." Ronan nodded, thinking that Paul was smart enough. He didn't need him to say that he had thought of this level. Thinking of the business opportunity, Paul seemed to be injected with chicken blood. The speed of purchasing prescriptions, medicine making equipment and potion materials was much faster than usual. Soon, Paul brought a parchment with a formula of the primary meditation potion, a set of alchemy equipment in a wooden box stuffed in hay, and 3 boxes of potion materials to Ronan's small attic. After chatting with Paul for a few words and sending him away, Ronan began to make the potion. He first placed the parchment with a formula of the primary meditation potion on the flame of a candle and burned it. Just after a glance, he memorized all the formulas and could write them down exactly at any time. Then, he opened the wooden box and took out the alchemy equipment one by one. A scale, a black crucible, a copper long-handled spoon, a grinding mortar, a stone pestle, a small bellows. Ronan placed the equipment on the table. Then, he opened the box containing the potion materials. To make the primary meditation potion, you need 5 grams of the blood crystal of the magic lizard dragon, 5 grams of the rhizome of the fish beamwood, 8 grams of the spirit grass, and 3 petals of the mind flower. Ronan didn't even use a scale. He directly used Hang Meng to control the weight error of each potion material to within 0.001 grams. He piled a few stones on the table. He placed a small iron basin on the stone. After pouring charcoal into it, he sprinkled sawdust to fill the gaps in the charcoal. On the iron basin, an iron rack was placed. A crucible was placed on the rack and pure water was poured in. He picked up the flint and fire steel and knocked them several times. A spark burst out from the collision point of the flint and fire steel and jumped into the iron basin where the charcoal was placed. The spark touched the sawdust and soon turned into a ball of fire, spreading in the iron basin. Soon, the charcoal was burned red. A wave of heat spread in the room. Then, Ronan began to grind the potion materials. He used the stone pestle to hit the grinding mortar continuously, and the muffled sound echoed in the room. After each portion was ground, he poured it into the crucible. Soon, all the potion powders of various colors entered the crucible. Mixed together, it showed a strange dark green color. After Ronan stirred the crucible 5 times with a long-handled spoon, he picked up a small manual bellows. He held the two handles of the bellows with both hands and slowly pressed the air outlet of the bellows towards the charcoal fire. He gave instructions to Hong Meng to analyze the temperature and changes of the potion. Sometimes he used the bellows to adjust the temperature, and sometimes he used a long-handled spoon to stir the potion. After about half an hour, Ronan refined the primary meditation potion. The refined potion was a light green liquid with a slight luster. He moved the shelf away from the small brazier. After the potion cooled slightly, he opened the stoppers of the potion bottles one by one, inserted the funnels one by one, and poured the potion into them. 3 bottles of primary meditation potion were completed. Ronan used Hong Meng to analyze the potion's effectiveness, and found no problem. Ronan summoned Hong Meng, and looked at his own values. Primary meditation potion, 35% for beginners. If he had a higher proficiency, he would be able to make multiple bottles of potions at the same time, and the speed would be faster. Continue to make potions. After Ronan put away the 3 bottles of primary meditation potions, he moved the still extinguished brazier back, placed it on the shelf, and continued to repeat the steps just now. The next day, Ronan called Paul and asked him to take away the 20 bottles of primary meditation potions. One day, Paul looked at the 20 bottles of primary meditation potions neatly placed on the table, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He opened the bottles of primary meditation potions one by one, took a look, and was a little suspicious. Can all these potions be used? He saw that the appearance of this primary meditation potion looked no different from ordinary potions, but he couldn't guarantee the effectiveness of it. After all, this was a potion made by a beginner in pharmacy in one day. Ronan, I bought these 20 bottles with my own money first. Paul said, I used them myself, and found no problem. You can continue to refine them later. After that, he placed the 20 bottles of primary meditation potion in a wooden box piled with hay, and took it away. 5 days later, Paul visited Ronan again. This time, he brought more potion materials. Ronan, you are really a genius in refining medicine, Paul exclaimed. The 20 bottles of primary meditation potion you refined are better than those made by the 3rd level wizard apprentices in the academy. Ronan had learned from Paul before that primary meditation potions were easier to refine, and the profit was not high. Formal wizards and above would not bother to refine them. Therefore, the primary meditation potions supplied in the academy were all refined by 3rd level wizard apprentices. But you can't make it so well in the future. Paul continued, if the potions we sell are more effective than those made by those 3rd level wizard apprentices, there will be no market for their primary meditation potions. This will affect their interests. They are all descendants of wizard families, and I'm just a down and out nobleman. I can't compete with them at all. In the future, you should be a little sloppy in the refining process to reduce the efficacy. I will lower the price of the potion and sell it specifically to those people in the academy who have less money and can't afford the primary meditation potion before. Okay. Ronan agreed. From then on, Ronan concentrated on refining the primary meditation potion. Paul was responsible for selling the potion. Ronan heard from Paul that he had recruited a few younger brothers in the academy to help them sell the potion. Ronan delivered 5 batches of goods to Paul, a total of 100 bottles. For each bottle, he could get a profit of 1 Valent silver coin. According to the current exchange rate of Valent gold coins to silver coins of 140. That is to say, he earned 2 Valent gold coins by selling potions. And buying a storage ring costs 3000 gold coins. After all, this elementary meditation potion is a potion that can be made by wizard apprentices, and the profit from earning gold coins is slow. Ronan thought to himself, if this is the case, I don't know when I can earn 3000 gold coins. Just thinking about it, suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Who said that this potion is only limited to being sold in the academy? There is more than one wizard academy in the kingdom of Valent, and there are other wild wizard apprentices who practice alone. Why not sell it to them? Thinking of this, Ronan went out to discuss this matter with Paul. Chapter 12. The first stage of the immortal tree. The third stage of key training. Midtown, Wild Beer Bar. Ronan was having dinner while telling Paul about his idea to expand the sales of primary meditation potions. Paul took a sip of white wine. I'm also preparing for what you said. During this period, I'm looking for a pharmacy that can sell primary meditation potions. So far, I have only found one, Tom's Pharmacy. Tom was the owner of the pharmacy who sold the elf treasure tree root to Ronan. After Ronan and Paul chatted for a few more words, he showed off 2 plates of coconut beef pies. Before the curfew bell rang, he hurriedly left the tavern. After returning to the small attic, Ronan began to cast the growth spell on his natal immortal wood. His proficiency in the growth spell reached 95% proficiency. His chanting speed was much faster. When his proficiency reached proficient, he realized that swallowing a few syllables while chanting would not affect the casting. In this way, the casting speed was much faster. While Ronan was casting the spell, he gave instructions to Hang Meng to analyze his natal immortal wood. A circle of fine blue-light patterns swept across the potted plant, and a stream of information emerged in Ronan's mind. Spiritual plant, lifelong wood year. 11. Ronan had discovered earlier that he shared vitality with the lifelong wood. The age of the lifelong wood was the same as his lifespan. He once again summoned Hang Meng to analyze himself. Lifespan: 90 strength, 3.5 spirit, 4.5 mana, 3.4 skills. Ancient wood longevity skill, 92% in the first level. Talisman, amulet, 31% proficient. Light body talisman, 3% proficient. Witchcraft, growth skill, 95% proficient. Knowledge, magic plant science, 16% proficient. Alchemy, 2% proficient. Potion, primary meditation potion, 35% proficient. Cultivation realm, 2nd level of key refining wizard level. 1st level wizard apprentice's current lifespan of 90 years is partly due to the increase in cultivation, and the remaining 11 years are the feedback from his natal longevity tree. Ancient wood longevity skill is really a good skill. Fortunately, the spiritual energy in the secular world of the cultivation world is thin, and no one can practice it, so I got it. After thinking for a while, Ronan put away his thoughts and continued to use his magic power to perform the growth skill on his natal longevity tree. After about 3 hours, he suddenly felt a vitality stirring in his natal immortal wood. He was connected to the natal immortal wood, and he could immediately sense the changes in the natal immortal wood. It seems to be sprouting. Ronan was refreshed and continued to activate the growth technique. The sprouting of the natal immortal wood means that it will soon grow into the natal immortal tree. This will be a qualitative change. A green light shone in the soil of the potted plant. Soon, the soil in the middle of the potted plant bulged slightly. A green sprout gradually emerged from the soil in the green light. At this moment, Ronan felt that the speed at which the natal immortal tree absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was much faster than before. He summoned Hang Meng to analyze the natal immortal tree. Spiritual plant, natal immortal tree year. 12. In the information flow, the status of the spiritual plant has changed from natal immortal wood to natal immortal tree. Ronan continued to chant softly, casting the growth spell on his natal immortal tree. The green light shone for a long time in the soil, and the seedlings gradually grew. Ronan stopped casting until his mana was completely exhausted. He forced himself to sit cross-legged on the bed, practicing the ancient wood immortality technique to restore his physical strength and mana. After the natal immortal tree was formed, the speed of physical strength and mana recovery was also significantly faster. Ronan felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, nearly 3 times that of before, was pouring into his body. He hurriedly practiced the technique. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowed into his acupoints all over his body, flowing through his meridians like a stream. Finally, it flowed into his danshan like 100 rivers flowing into the sea. Under the operation of his technique, it was refined into the ancient wood immortality magic power. The verdant ancient wood immortality magic power, in the form of mist, swirled in his danshan, exuding vitality. After about half an hour, a force erupted in Ronan's danshan. A feeling as if everything is growing rose from his danshan, like a warm spring current flowing through his body. Breakthrough. Ronan asked Hang Meng to analyze himself again. Lifespan: 92 strength, 3.6 spirit, 4.6 mana, 3.6 skill. Ancient wood longevity skill, level 2, 1%. Talisman, Body talisman, 31% proficient. Light body talisman, 3% proficient. Witchcraft, growth technique, 95% proficient. Knowledge, magic plant science, 16% proficient. Alchemy, 2% proficient. Potion, primary meditation potion, 35% proficient. Cultivation realm, key refining level 3 wizard level. First level wizard apprentice finally reached the third level of key refining. Ronan looked inside his dungeon and found that his mana had grown a lot. In this way, I can use the growth technique for a longer time. At this time, Ronan's mana and physical strength had also recovered. So, he cast the growth spell on his lifelong tree again. Growth spell, 95% proficiency. Growth spell, 96% proficiency. The proficiency of the growth spell is gradually increasing. About 2 hours later, the witchcraft light of the growth spell suddenly became stronger. But the growth spell also broke through and reached 1% proficiency. Then, he stopped casting the growth spell. He cast the growth spell again by chanting. He asked Hang Meng to calculate the time and found that he could chant it within 3 seconds. According to the female druid Awen, if the chanting time of the growth spell can be controlled within 3 seconds, it means that he is already quite familiar with this witchcraft. You can try to build a witchcraft model for this witchcraft. Once the model is successfully constructed, the witchcraft can be cast instantly. Awen also taught Ronan how to build the model of the growth spell. According to Awen's teaching, constructing a witchcraft model is very complicated and difficult. But this is not a difficult task for Ronan, who has AI assistants. Immediately, Ronan followed Awen's teachings, used his magic power, condensed lines in his mind, and began to construct the witchcraft model of the growth technique. While constructing, he asked Hang Meng to analyze the construction errors for him. Once an error occurred, he would correct it immediately. He found that the strength of mental power would also reduce the difficulty of constructing the witchcraft model. He practiced the ancient wood longevity technique and had good mental power. Constructing the witchcraft model was smoother than he imagined. In his mind, the witchcraft model of the first level spell, the growth technique, gradually took shape without any hindrance. Less than half a minute later, a 3-dimensional model constructed with verdant lines was engraved in his mind. Ronan stretched out his hand to the natal longevity tree. No need for any chanting, just a thought. The magic power of the growth technique immediately wrapped up the roots of the natal longevity tree. A turquoise glow shone from the soil of the potted plant. The young seedling of the immortal tree once again slowly rose upward at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye. Thank you for the 1500 reward from the boss, who finally had time. Chapter 13 Master Level Talisman. Knock knock knock. Hiss. The next day, Ronan was drawing a talisman when he heard a knock on the door, and his mind was distracted. The half-drawn light body talisman was declared a failure. Who? Ronan shouted, and immediately took the talisman drawing props and talisman paper on the table, and wrapped them with a large cloth. With a thought, he took them to the room of the world of cultivation. Soon, he returned to the wizard world. It's me, your beloved friend, Paul Wilson. Ronan returned to the attic and heard this sentence coming from outside the door. He opened the door and saw Paul's brown curly hair and a thin face with freckles. At this time, Paul's right hand was playing with 4 valiant gold coins. With the cooperation of Paul's right thumb and the other 4 fingers, the 4 gold coins swam between Paul's fingers like fish. Ronan, this is your share, Paul said as he stretched out his right hand. Ronan also stretched out his right hand, palm up, and spread it to Paul. The 4 gold coins in Paul's hand fell into Ronan's hand. The sound of the gold coins colliding was crisp and pleasant. Is it still so little? Ronan said as he put the gold coins into his waist bag. Little? Paul raised his eyebrows. Not a small amount. How can it be so easy to expand sales? You have to share the profits with the owner of the pharmacy, and you have to say hello to the gang in that area. Ronan, you don't really want to save money to buy that storage ring? Alas, we are too weak now. With me, a first level wizard apprentice, it is impossible to make a lot of money. It's fortunate that the potions with slightly worse efficacy don't sell well, so no one will steal our business. In short, the market is small, the profit is not much, and it takes cost and energy to get involved, so others are too lazy to get involved. Ronan summed up in his mind. Thinking of this, a new idea came to his mind. Paul, is there any special potion that is difficult to refine or has a very low success rate? Few people try to refine this kind of special potion because the success rate is too low. If you can refine it and the success rate is higher than that of ordinary people, you can make money. If the success rate is extremely high, you can make a lot of money. For other wizards, when refining medicine, they cannot use clear data to analyze the state of the medicine, so they can only judge it based on their own experience and vision. But Ronan has the assistance of AI, and the success rate of refining medicine can be close to 100%. After hearing this, Paul's eyes widened slightly and looked at Ronan. Ronan had shown his excellent talent for refining medicine in front of him, and maybe he could really improve the success rate of refining this kind of medicine. Wait a minute, I'll go ask around. After throwing down a sentence, Paul hurried down the stairs and left. Ronan closed the door and walked back to the desk. After taking a look and making sure that the door was closed tightly, he moved his mind and his body disappeared out of thin air in the room. In a flash, his body reappeared with a cloth bag in his hand. He spread the cloth bag on the desk and found the talisman drawing tools and the talisman he had just drawn. Continue drawing talismans. Ronan arranged the paper, pen, and talisman ink while giving instructions to Hong Meng to call up the values. Talisman, amulet, 98% mastery, light body talisman, 86% mastery. The amulet is about to break through. Draw the amulet first. Immediately, Ronan arranged the cut parchments into several rows on the table. He picked up the wolf hair brush, dipped the talisman ink in the copper wine cup, and started writing on the parchment. The spiritual energy of the wizard world was attracted by his magic power and merged into the strokes of the talisman. Now that his amulet has reached 95% mastery, it will not affect him, even if he skips the ceremony before drawing the talisman. His writing speed is even faster. In just 3 seconds, he finished drawing a talisman. As soon as the end of the talisman foot of the previous talisman had a flash of light, he immediately picked up the talisman pen and drew another one. After drawing all the 16 pieces of talisman paper on the table, he skillfully moved his hands across the table and quickly gathered all the talismans on the table into one place. Then, he placed another 16 pieces of talisman paper and continued drawing talismans. After drawing for a while, Ronan raised the talisman pen in his hand. A flash of light flashed at the end of the talisman foot. The talisman was completed. In his mind, Hong Meng sent out data. Talisman, amulet, master 1%, light body talisman, mastery 86%. The amulet has reached the master level. Moreover, after the amulet reaches the master level, the power of the talisman will definitely be much stronger than before. I just don't know how much stronger. Since the amulet reached mastery, I haven't tried the power of the talisman. The light body talisman is also about to break through. After the light body talisman breaks through the master level, we will try the power of these two talismans together. Thinking of this, Ronan collected his mind, picked up the talisman pen, and began to improve the mastery of the light body talisman. When the attic darkened, Ronan realized that dusk had come. After he pulled his mind away from drawing talismans, he felt hungry. His stomach churned, and his belly growled again. So he went to the kitchen and used the chickens he had killed to make the talisman ink to make 2 fragrant cheese roasted chickens. He then ate a hard baguette with wine. After he was full, he continued to draw the light body talisman. Light body talisman, 89% mastery. Light body talisman, 90% mastery. As he drew one light body talisman after another, his proficiency in this talisman was constantly increasing. Ding ding, the bell outside the house sounded, announcing the start of curfew. Ronan raised the talisman pen in his hand. Light body talisman, master 1%. The light body talisman has also reached the master level. Ronan was slightly happy. He couldn't help but pour a glass of wine and drank it for himself. It's time to test the power of these two talismans. But when he heard the curfew bell outside, he temporarily calmed down his desire to go out and test the talisman. He planned to leave Triumph City early tomorrow morning and find a deserted place to test the power of the talisman. The next day, the morning light shone on Triumph City. Under the overlooking of Glory Castle and the Wizard Tower, this kingdom's capital gradually became active. Creaky Ronan opened the door of the small attic. The light of the morning sun came towards him and hit him. He tied up his long hair, that was usually loose. However, he did not tie up all his long hair, but only tied up part of it, and let the other part hang down. He wore an off-white tunic and a half-cloak with a black base and yellow patterns. He wore a pair of cowhide boots. On his shoulders was a satchel made of linen with bright patterns. In the satchel, there were 20 master level amulets and 20 master level light body amulets, as well as dozens of amulets and light amulets that had not reached the master level. He first went to the market and bought a baguette, chewing it while walking towards the outside of Cakeson City. Chapter 14 Amulet plus Light Body Amulet. Carriages and pedestrians lined up in a long line, passing through the city gate and entering Triumph City one after another. These were people from the surrounding villages, transporting their crops, game or handicrafts into Triumph City, some of which were sold retail, and some were sent to the mansions of dignitaries in the city. Ronan walked out of Triumph City humming a song in a low voice. Standing outside the city gate of Triumph City, looking into the distance, on one side were green rice fields, and on the other side were messy villages and markets. Ronan passed through rice fields, villages, and markets, and the places he led to were less and less populated, and more spacious. Under the blue sky of tomorrow, there was a path embedded in the wilderness. Ronan walked on the path, seeing the sky high and wide, and no one around, feeling happy in his heart, and the sound of humming the songs of his previous life became much louder. When he saw a carriage coming from a distance, he stopped singing and walked by in silence. After walking for about an hour, he finally came to an uninhabited forest. A faint mist flowed through the forest, and the morning light passed through the gaps between the leaves, forming golden beams in the mist. Ronan first used 2 master level amulets on himself. Immediately, the power stored in the amulets formed 2 invisible films tightly together around him. The mist that was originally floating on his clothes was immediately isolated by these 2 invisible films. He looked at a tree trunk next to him and punched it suddenly. Bang! The tree shook, the branches and leaves fell, and the birds on the tree chirped and flew away. Ronan looked at a concave mark on the tree and thought, the power of the 3rd level of key refining is not enough to knock down a tree, but it is enough to leave a concave mark on the tree trunk. However, this is equivalent to the power of an intermediate night attendant. In the memory of the original body, his elder brother and younger brother had this kind of power when they were still intermediate night attendants. Then, Ronan used another light body amulet on himself. A force was injected into the film formed by the amulet. Suddenly, he felt his body become lighter. He took a step and ran in the forest at a speed that ordinary people could not reach. Hongmeng, analyze the current speed. Ronan gave Hongmeng an order in his mind. Immediately, a stream of information emerged in his mind. Current speed. 30 km per hour. Ronan felt that it was not fast enough, so he used another light body talisman on himself. Hongmeng, analyze the speed. Current speed. 46 km per hour. The superposition of 2 light body talismans does not double the speed. While running, Ronan took out another light body talisman from his bag and injected mana into it. The power of the light body talisman once again merged into the film formed by the amulet. He felt that his body was even lighter. Hongmeng, analyze the speed again. Current speed. 58 km per hour. Ronan ran in the woods and felt the surrounding scenery quickly receding behind him. The power of the amulet protected him. Although he was running, his cloak and hair did not flutter. Seeing that his speed was not fast enough, Ronan used 5 more light body amulets. His running speed suddenly increased. His body suddenly rushed forward. He asked Hongmeng to analyze his speed. Current speed. 90 km per hour. The fog in the forest was stirred into vortices by him. Behind him, a cloud of dust rose. He dodged trees in the forest and ran for a while. Suddenly, he had an idea. Although his physical strength was not strong, he could not hit hard after using the amulet. But what if he added speed? Ronan's eyes brightened, and he immediately took out several amulets from his bag and injected mana. Immediately, layers of invisible films adhered to his clothes and overlapped. He was afraid that he would still be in danger at high speed, so he used all the master level amulets on himself. Then, he used 6 light body amulets on himself. The speed immediately soared to 110 km per hour. Ronan flew towards a tree trunk that was so big that a man could hug it. Bang! Ronan crashed into the tree. He was not hurt at all, but the tree was broken by him. Wood chips flew from the broken end. The broken tree trunk flew backwards and hit the tree behind it. Crack! Another tree broke. The 2 trees fell to the ground, stirring up dust. After hitting the tree, Ronan felt that the power and speed of the amulet had only decreased slightly. This power is not weak. Even a formal knight will suffer under my impact. I'm afraid that the fireball of a formal wizard may not be able to catch up with me. Ronan was excited. After coming to this wizard world, he finally had some ability to protect himself. He could use his mental power to control the power of the light body amulet, to control his body and turn at high speed. However, his realm is not high now, and his mental power is slightly insufficient. At this speed, his mental power is still a bit difficult to control. However, the process of controlling speed is also a process of training mental strength. As long as you keep trying to control speed, your mental strength will be improved. Ronan was running on the outskirts of the woods and suddenly saw a huge black object in the distance, hidden in the bushes. Looking closely, it was a wild boar. Ronan ran towards him, and the dust rolled, and the momentum was huge. Soon attracted the attention of the wild boar. The wild boar raised its head from the bushes, and its pair of dark eyes flashed with a fierce light, staring at Ronan. This is a bloodthirsty and warlike wild boar. A few days ago, this wild boar pushed its long and sharp teeth into the fat belly of a noble in another part of the woods. When it pulled out its sharp teeth, it brought out the man's fat intestines. It was very brave, but it still escaped despite the pursuit and interception of the noble's followers. Now seeing Ronan, its ferocity was aroused again. The wild boar moved its hind legs, shaking its bristles and fat, and ran towards Ronan. Ronan had been running for quite a while and hit a few trees. The power of the amulet and the light body amulet had weakened a lot. Seeing the wild boar rushing towards him, Ronan immediately reached into his bag with both hands. When he took out his hands, there was a stack of talismans between the fingers of both hands. Then, he suddenly poured magic power into all the talismans. Immediately, the power of the 2 talismans acted on his body at the same time. There were more than a dozen layers of membranes around him. His running speed also increased suddenly. Bang! His body almost turned into an afterimage and collided head-on with the wild boar. After the collision, its speed suddenly slowed down. The wild boar, like a black bag, wailed and flew backwards, drawing an arc in the air. Bang, bang, bang. After breaking 3 trees in a row, it fell to the ground. Deep red blood, almost black, flowed from the bloody body of the wild boar, forming a pool of blood. Thanks to the boss for finally having the time to give me the 1500 reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Anti-Aging Agents. After testing the power of the amulet and the light body amulet, Ronan returned to Triumph City with satisfaction. It took him most of the day to leave the city, test the amulet, and return to the city. It was already afternoon, and the afternoon sun was lazily shining on Triumph City. Ronan returned to the middle city and saw several knights wearing golden armor, white cloaks, and royal emblems on the street, guarding 3 sedan chairs with colorful patterns, and walking on the street. Only the royal guards would wear such attire, and in Triumph City, only royal nobles are qualified to ride in sedan chairs. Ronan didn't know which royal noble in the upper city suddenly had the leisure time to go out for fun. He had heard that there were several arrogant royal children among the royal nobles. He didn't want to get into trouble for no reason, so he turned his eyes away from the 3 sedan chairs. He walked into another street, turned a corner, and returned to his small attic. After not eating for nearly half a day, Ronan returned to the attic and used wine to buy a baguette to satisfy his hunger. Then, he began to cast the breeding spell on the life tree. The breeding spell was immediately activated. By activating the witchcraft model, the magic power full of vitality grew in the potted plant and wrapped the roots of the life tree. The soil of the potted plant began to bloom with emerald green light. Ronan gave Hang Meng an order to analyze the life tree. Spiritual plant, life tree year 13. The life tree has grown, and my alchemy has reached proficient, so I can try to refine the magic plant growth accelerator. Ronan thought while casting the breeding spell. With the breeding spell and the growth accelerator working together, the life tree will grow faster. Ronan continued to cast the breeding spell until his magic power was about to run out. He sat cross-legged on the bed and practiced the ancient wood longevity skill. After restoring his mana, he decided to go to the wild beer bar, find Paul, and ask him to find the formula for the growth accelerator for him. The wild beer bar. The aroma of wine was everywhere, and the voices were noisy, except for a bearded bard, who was playing his harp with a poor tone that sounded like an old woman's wail. The noisiest place was the big table on the left, where a group of 6 mercenaries gathered. Everyone was holding a big wooden wine glass, and a woman with very little clothing was sitting on their laps, laughing and talking together. Ronan saw Paul in the corner again. The young wizard apprentice was drinking by himself again, and his eyes drifted to the table of mercenaries from time to time. Paul. Ronan sat down next to Paul. At this time, Paul came back to his senses and greeted Ronan. After ordering the food and drinks, Ronan said to Paul, "Can you get me the formula for the growth promoting potion? Are you going to start cultivating magic plants yourself?" Paul's blue eyes showed a little surprise. "I didn't expect your magic plant science to improve so quickly. The growth promoting potion is just a first level magic potion, easy to make, no problem." Ronan nodded, and when the bartender brought his pineapple beef pie to him, he scooped a piece with a spoon and put it in his mouth, chewing while saying, "Also, have you found a potion with a low success rate?" Now, Ronan's amulet and light body amulet are already quite powerful. He has already planned to explore the place where the monks gather. Carrying a large number of amulets and light body amulets in a bag is inconvenient and easy to attract attention. So, he thought about it and decided to save money and buy a storage magic device. Selling potions with low success rates is his hope to make money quickly. "I did find a formula," Paul said, "but the success rate of this formula is extremely low, and the uses of this potion are relatively limited." "What is the potion formula?" Ronan asked. "A first level magic potion, an anti-aging potion," Paul replied. "To make this potion, no spells are required, and the materials used are not that expensive. It's just that the steps for making it are cumbersome and complicated, and the time, temperature, and so on must be controlled extremely precisely. Not to mention a third level wizard apprentice, even a formal wizard may only succeed 5 times out of 100 times. This potion is used to slow down skin aging, and its effectiveness is only significant if used before the age of 30. If used after the age of 30, it will have almost no effect. After a wizard has become a formal wizard, he can use energy particles to temper his body. At this stage of formal wizards, he can practice a third level witchcraft, the anti-aging technique. Energy particles can be used to help people of any age group slow down skin aging. So, if a formal wizard wants to make money, he might as well practice anti-aging techniques. After listening to this, Ronan just said lightly, "Do you have a formula? Do you want to try?" Paul frowned, then let go. "Okay, I'll get the formula tomorrow and give you 20 sets of materials and send them to your little attic." The next afternoon, in the attic, Paul brought the formula and materials, chatted with Ronan for a few words, and then left. Ronan glanced at the formula and threw it aside. Then, he took out the materials and laid out the tools for refining medicine. "Start refining." Ronan set up the crucible and lit a charcoal fire. He poured the materials into the grinding mortar one by one and ground them with a stone pestle. The anti-aging agent requires 11 kinds of potion materials. Although they are both first level potions, the types of materials required are much more than those of the primary meditation potion. Ronan summoned the AI Hang Meng and asked Hang Meng to measure the temperature, and analyze the potion status while refining. After working for almost an hour, the refining was coming to an end. Ronan was concentrating on stirring the milky white liquid in the crucible with a copper long-handled spoon. As he stirred, the milky white color gradually faded. The whole pot of liquid became clearer and clearer. When the liquid was clear to the bottom, Ronan took out the copper long-handled spoon and put it aside. Done. Ronan took an empty bottle and opened the cork. After inserting the funnel, he poured the anti-aging agent in the crucible into the bottle. As expected of me, even if the success rate of a formal wizard is only 5%, I can almost make it 100%. Ronan thought to himself while filling the potion. However, a success rate of almost 100% is too eye-catching. Paul sent 20 portions of materials. Then I will refine 4 portions. As for the other 16 portions of materials, I will find another channel to sell them. After filling the potion, Ronan continued to refine the anti-aging agent. 2 days later, he used a wooden box to pack 4 bottles of anti-aging agent and went to the wild beer bar to find Paul. I have refined the anti-aging agent. It took a lot of effort. I only succeeded in 4 of the 20 portions of materials. Ronan whispered in Paul's ear. At this time, Paul was holding the sauce bread and was about to bite it happily. After hearing Ronan's words, his pupils suddenly shook and he slowly turned around and looked at Ronan. Chapter 16 The 4th level of key refining. When Paul took Ronan's 4 bottles of anti-aging agent away, he felt a little dreamy. I'm really a little envious. No, I really envy this kid Ronan. He felt that his wizard talent of A level was nothing big. Perhaps in a few years, he would rely on witchcraft and listen to the royal orders to fight against other kingdoms and other races. And Ronan could make a lot of money safely with his excellent attainments in pharmacy and magical plants. Ronan and Paul parted ways at the door of the tavern. In his waist bag, there was the formula of the growth accelerating agent given by Paul. However, Paul did not give him the materials. Ronan went to Tom's pharmacy and bought 10 potion materials for refining the growth accelerating agent. He hired a donkey cart and transported them back to the small attic. After returning to the small attic, Ronan immediately started to refine the medicine. The growth accelerating agent is a common first level magic potion and is not difficult to refine. Soon, Ronan refined the growth accelerating agent. He directly picked up the crucible and walked to the potted tree of the life tree. He poured a drop of the crystal green growth accelerator in the crucible. The growth accelerator seeped into the soil. However, Ronan did not feel that the life tree seedling had grown. Is it because the amount is not enough? Ronan thought and poured a little more on the seedling. The life tree still did not react. He was connected to the life of the life tree, and if the life tree grew, he could feel it very accurately. At this moment, he really felt nothing. So Ronan poured more growth accelerator on the life tree seedling. Gradually, he poured more and more until all the growth accelerator was poured down. He only felt a little growth of the life tree in his heart. It feels like I poured water down, Ronan muttered. He began to think about which link had gone wrong. After refining the growth accelerator, he had analyzed it with Han Meng. This growth accelerator is effective, but for some reason, this medicine cannot work on the immortal tree. Ronan pondered for a while, but still couldn't figure it out. So he simply gave up thinking about it and practiced tonight. When he had the magic plant class tomorrow, he would ask the female druid Awen about it. In the middle city, the bungalow of the female druid Awen. The afternoon sun shone in from the round window. The magic plant bathed in the sun, the branches and leaves twisted slowly, and seemed to enjoy it very much. Ronan sat on the single sofa, and Awen sat on the rocking chair, wearing a loose linen jumpsuit, revealing a pair of tight and smooth wheat-colored long legs. Ms. Drell, before class, I want to ask you something. Ronan said. Please go ahead, Mr. Lawrence. Awen sat up slightly from the rocking chair, straightened her body, folded her hands on her thighs, and looked at Ronan seriously with a pair of bright brown eyes. I want to ask, why can't the first level magic potion growth accelerator have an effect on some magic plants? Are you cultivating precious magic plants? After hearing Ronan's question, Awen answered immediately without thinking. Ronan nodded. His lifelong tree was made from the most precious magic plant in the wizarding world, the elf treasure tree. Awen continued, ordinary first level growth accelerators are only suitable for ordinary magic plants. If it is those precious magic plants, the proportion of the refining materials of the growth accelerator needs to be changed according to the structure and growth state of the magic plant. Then how to change it? Ronan asked. You can make potions? Awen was a little surprised when she heard Ronan's words. She didn't expect Ronan to have the skill of making potions. Yes, Ronan replied. Awen didn't ask any more questions. Next, she taught Ronan how to adjust the proportion of the growth accelerator according to the state of the magic plant. Near dusk, Ronan walked out of Awen's bungalow with a potted plant in his hand. The potted plants are ordinary magic plants, psychedelic grass, which can be used to refine meditation potions, hallucinogenic potions, etc. He learned from Awen how to change the potion ratio according to the state of the magic plant. That is to take an ordinary magic plant and pour ordinary growth promoting potions on it. Then, wrap the magic plant with mental power and sense how the growth promoting potion acts on the growth of the magic plant. After knowing the working process of the growth promoting potion, he changed the material ratio of the growth promoting potion according to the structure and growth state of the magic plant he wanted to cultivate. After Ronan learned this method, he bought this ordinary magic plant from Awen. The psychedelic grass is green with blue, and it emits a faint blue light in the gradually dark night. After bringing the psychedelic grass back to the small attic, Ronan immediately refined an ordinary growth promoting potion. After pouring the growth promoting potion on the psychedelic grass, he released his spiritual consciousness, wrapped the psychedelic grass, and sensed it carefully. While sensing, he used AI Hang Meng to assist in analysis. Soon, he understood the working process of the growth accelerator. Then, he began to change the ratio of the growth accelerator materials. However, after changing the ratio of the growth accelerator materials, it may not be successfully refined. Ronan used Hang Meng to refine it 3 times, and adjusted the ratio of the growth accelerator materials 3 times. Finally, he succeeded in refining the growth accelerator specially customized for the natal immortal tree. He poured the growth accelerator on the natal immortal tree seedling. The growth accelerator seeped into the soil and was absorbed by the roots. Suddenly, Ronan felt a sense of vigorous growth in his heart. It's done. From then on, Ronan took a 2-pronged approach. In addition to performing the growth spell on the natal immortal tree every day, he also watered it with the growth accelerator. However, he heard from Awen that the growth accelerator should not be used too much. If used too much, it would have a counter effect on the growth of the magic plant. His natal immortal tree can withstand a maximum of 3 bottles of growth accelerator every day. If it is too much, it will cause damage to the seedling. Under the combined effects of the growth technique and the growth accelerator, the life tree grew much faster than before. After a month, the life tree seedling was already as tall as a palm, and the age of the life tree has reached 20 years. At the same time, the speed at which the life tree absorbs and refines the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has also increased a lot. That night, he used the growth technique on the life tree until his mana was exhausted. Then he sat cross-legged on the bed and used the ancient wood longevity technique. First, to restore mana, and second, to improve his cultivation. I'm about to break through. Yesterday, Ronan felt that he was on the verge of a breakthrough again. He kept breathing in and out, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth passed through his various divine acupoints and flowed into his meridians. Then it gathered towards the Danshan. In the Danshan, there was a sphere condensed from green mist, which was rotating. This sphere was the condensation of the ancient wood longevitas mana. At the same time, the life tree was also constantly refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, turning it into mana, and injecting it into his Danshan. After a few breaths, Ronan's Danshan suddenly shook. A force full of vitality burst out from the Danshan and flowed throughout the body. Finally broke through. The 4th level of key refining. Chapter 17. Diagonally Black Market. Ronan summoned Hang Meng and analyzed himself. Lifespan: 109 strength, 4.9 spirit, 6.4 mana, 5.4 skill, ancient wood longevity skill, 3rd level 3%, talisman, amulet, master 10%, light body talisman, master 3%, witchcraft, growth technique, 92% proficient, knowledge, magic plant science, 82% proficient, pharmacy, 62% proficient, potion, growth agent, 23% proficient, anti-aging agent, 36% proficient, primary meditation potion, 35% proficient. Cultivation realm, 4th level of key refining wizard level, 2nd level wizard apprentice. After reaching the 4th level of key refining, with his current mental strength and mana strength, he is already a 2nd level wizard apprentice. I'm at the 4th level of key refining. I don't know what the range of my spiritual sense is. The larger the range of my spiritual sense, the easier it is to sense danger. This is quite useful for him to explore unfamiliar places where monks gather. Thinking of this, Ronan immediately released his spiritual sense. An invisible spiritual power wave, centered at his eyebrows, spread out in all directions. He could sense things about 50 meters around him. The perception was strongest around him, and the further he went 50 meters, the weaker the perception became. When he was 50 meters away, he could not sense anything. After knowing the range of his spiritual sense, Ronan's heart moved, and he retracted his spiritual sense. These days, Ronan took time out every day to refine anti-aging agents, and sold them to Paul. Some upper nobles, that is, wizard families, had wizards in their families, who cast spells to fight against aging, so they naturally did not need Ronan's anti-aging agents. Some middle and lower nobles, who did not have wizards in their families, had to spend a lot of money to ask wizards to help, so they were quite fond of this slightly lower priced anti-aging agent. For every bottle of anti-aging agent sold, Ronan could get a share of 3 Valen gold coins. In the past month, he had received more than 900 Valen gold coins. In addition, the family letter he wrote received a response from the noble father, Leighton Lawrence. The father sent him 500 Valen gold coins, which he received 3 days ago. In addition, he inquired about the pharmacy in Triumph City that sold potion materials through channels other than Paul. He disguised himself and sold the excess potions from refining anti-aging agents. In this way, another sum of money came in. Now, he has more than 1,600 Valen gold coins in his pocket. As long as he works harder, he will soon be able to earn enough money to buy storage magic tools. After I buy the storage magic tools, I can go to the gathering place of monks to explore. These days, he has also been actively preparing everything. He prepared 3 leather bags for amulets and light amulets. He piled them all under the bed and put them in after buying the storage magic tools. Currently, there is still a lack of weapons. After using the amulets and light amulets, he has terrifying speed and defense. If a sharp blade is added, the lethality will be greatly increased. But where can I buy weapons? Ronan couldn't help but frown. The Kingdom of Valant not only restricts the sale of wizard knowledge and witchcraft materials, but also restricts the sale of weapons and armor. The weapons and armor forged by the blacksmith shops on the street can only be sold to registered knights. Moreover, the buyer's name must be registered for each weapon and armor sold. If the blacksmith shop does not do so, it will be fined heavily. If there are serious consequences, such as a buyer who does not register his name using the blacksmith shop's weapons to kill someone, the owner of the blacksmith shop may even be sentenced to death. Go find Paul, he has many ways. Thinking of this, Ronan went out and walked towards the Wild Beer Bar. Wild Beer Bar. When Ronan saw Paul, Paul was drinking with a woman in tattered clothes. The woman sat on Paul's lap and flirted with Paul. Ronan, he. After seeing Ronan, Paul greeted him with a beaming face. Then, he gently patted the woman's buttocks. The woman got up from Paul's thigh and walked to the other side. Since the anti-aging potion sold well, Paul's life has become better, and his clothes have become brighter and more beautiful. In the past, Paul always wore a simple wizard robe. Now, his wizard robe is not only close-fitting, but also has defensive magic on it, emitting magical fluctuations. Ronan sat down next to Paul. He could still smell the lingering fragrance of the woman just now in his nose. Ronan, here. Paul took out a cloth bag from his wizard robe and handed it to Ronan. Ronan took it and knew that there were nearly 50 Valen gold coins in it just by weighing it. Thanks to those noble ladies and young ladies, it's another income today, Paul said. Ronan stuffed the money bag into his clothes and asked in a low voice, Paul, I want to get a sharp blade. Do you have any connections? Paul heard it and immediately said, yes, you are a rich man after all. You have to buy a sharp blade for self-defense. Although the security in the middle city is not bad, when danger comes, you still have to rely on yourself first. I know a few blacksmith shops that will sell you weapons and armor, but they often ask for very high prices. After all, they have to bear the risk. However, I do know a place where you may be able to find good weapons. Where? Ronan asked, thinking that Paul really has connections. Diagon Alley. Paul said, this place is in the lower city. I just found out about it a few days ago. Every few days, a black market will open. Those items that are prohibited from buying and selling by the kingdom's decree will be sold at the stalls. However, there are dragons and fish mixed in, and it is difficult to distinguish the true and false items. If you want to find good things, you must have a certain eye and luck. As he said, Paul unbuttoned a long waist bag. He pulled out an old small wand. I found this wand on the black market. Don't look at how old it is. If you use it to cast fire magic, it can increase the power by 5%. And its price is half of similar wands. Paul showed off the wand to Ronan and put it back. I also saw a lot of weapons on the black market. Hammers, chain hammers, daggers, everything. Some are even advertised as weapons forged by elves and dwarves. There are also elf rune carvings or dwarf casting threads on them. Unfortunately, I'm a long-range wizard, and these weapons are useless to me. But I have studied elven magic in the academy, and recognize a lot of elven runes. I can help you take a look. When will the black market open? Ronan asked. The next opening time is 4 PM tomorrow. Paul replied, if you are free, we will meet at Diagon Alley in the lower city tomorrow. The next afternoon, Ronan walked into Diagon Alley. Diagon Alley was flanked by high walls on both sides, completely blocking out the afternoon sun. The entire alley seemed dark and cramped. Ronan looked around and saw a row of simple stalls leaning against the high walls, lined up in the alley. Chapter 18, The Dark Elf's Dagger. Hey, Ronan. Not long after Ronan entered Diagon Alley, Paul also arrived. So, the two walked slowly in the alley together. Master Wizard, come over here and take a look. There is a second level amplification magic ring. Although it is damaged, its effectiveness is not reduced much. My lords, look at this. A hallucinogenic wand. Use it to perform hallucinogenic magic, and it can increase the power by 10%. My lords, here is an invisibility cloak. When Ronan and Paul walked past the stalls, some stall owners began to shout. Ronan looked at the items displayed on the stall and asked Paul, these witchcraft props all have specific functions. Can't you just try them here and know what they are? Paul smiled and said, most of these items are defective. Although the effects are not bad, they may have hidden side effects. For example, the second level amplification witch ring. Maybe you won't find any problems when you try it on the spot, but you can't say for sure whether it will suddenly explode after using it a few more times. And that hallucinogenic wand, maybe there is no problem when you try it, but after using it a few more times, your body may have side effects. The side effects may be insomnia, drowsiness, nightmares, or a combination of multiple side effects. And the invisibility cloak, this is a more dangerous item. Some defective invisibility cloaks will teleport the user to an unknown space after use, and the user will never come back. Then how do you ensure that the wand you bought is not a defective product? Ronan asked. Paul chuckled. After I bought it, I immediately spent some money and found a professor in the academy who was proficient in wand making. I asked him to help take a look, and he said there was no problem. This amount of money, plus the money to buy the wand, would not be more than the money to buy a wand with the same effect. I still made a profit. But you don't have to worry. Paul continued, you bought a weapon. As long as it is not an enchanted weapon, it is unlikely to cause major danger. What we have to worry about is the durability of the weapons. Most of these weapons have low durability. Maybe a cross sword that looks pretty good will break after a few swings with other people's swords. As he said, Paul pointed to a fine steel sword on the stall next to him. This sword is engraved with elven runes. Elf runes contain elven magic, which can make a sword sharper and tougher. This sword looks new and the runes look clear. But in fact, the durability of this sword is already low, and the original elven runes have been worn out. The later generations recarved the runes according to the original runes. That person must not have studied elven runeology. The runes he carved destroyed the structure of the original runes in subtle places. Not only did it not repair the sword, but it greatly reduced the durability of the sword. Hey, you can choose not to buy it, but don't talk nonsense. The stall owner shouted as Paul was talking. Paul ignored him and turned to another stall with Ronan. The stall owner was left behind, blowing his beard angrily. Ronan listened to Paul's chatter all the way and also learned some black market transactions. Durability. Hangmeng. Ronan immediately gave Hangmeng an order. Analyze the durability of the weapon. Ronan's eyes swept to a hammer on the stall. The hammer was the size of 2 palms, heavy and thick, with sharp nails and circles of threads on it, which looked extremely oppressive. Just as Ronan looked at the hammer, a circle of fine blue light that others could not see swept across the hammer. Immediately, a stream of information appeared in Ronan's mind. Analysis completed. Weapon durability 26%. Next, just test the sharpness and hardness of the weapon, and then obtain the weapon durability information. After Ronan had an idea, he walked to the stalls one by one. Hey, wait for me. Why are you walking so fast? I haven't seen the runes on the weapon clearly yet. Paul said as he caught up with Ronan. Sir, come over here and take a look. Seeing Ronan coming over, a vendor with a turban and a black curly beard immediately shouted, "Here is a dagger of a dark elf killer. It has stabbed the heart of a formal wizard. Although it has been used many times, it is still sharp." Dark elves, in ancient times, were used to refer to those elves who were stranded outside the elven kingdom and had not been illuminated by the holy light of the elven treasure tree. Because the holy light of the elf treasure tree can inject power into the elves. Elves that have been illuminated by the holy light will be more powerful than elves that have not been illuminated by the holy light. The holy light is to the elves as the sun is to all things. Later, a group of fallen elves appeared in the elf kingdom. They like to kill, like to mate, and are proficient in the manufacture of killing tools and dark elf magic. This group of fallen elves has not only plagued the elf kingdom, but also the human empire. So, since that time, the human race has called this kind of fallen elves dark elves. It is said that there are still some dark elves who are proficient in killing and act as killers in the kingdom of Valant. After the vendor boasted about this elven dagger, he pulled a curly beard from his chin and placed it on the elven dagger. This beard, just touching the edge of the elven dagger, was immediately broken into 2 pieces. Ronan immediately remembered a word from his previous life, blowing hair off hair. Then, the vendor let go of the dagger. The dagger fell down and landed on the bluestone brick, but it seemed to hit a piece of tofu and disappeared. This dagger is a good thing. Paul, who caught up with Ronan, saw the vendor's demonstration. Let me see how the elven runes on this dagger are preserved. Please look, sir, this is the real thing. I got it from a formal wizard. I won't lie to you. The vendor said, and generously handed the dagger to Paul for inspection. The elven runes on the dagger were very complicated. Paul's eyes widened, and he looked at it carefully. Ronan gave Hangmeng an order. Hangmeng, analyze the durability of the weapon. In Ronan's eyes, the dagger in Paul's hand flashed a circle of fine blue light. After the analysis, the weapon durability was 82%. This durability is not bad. How much is this dagger? Ronan asked immediately. Wait. Paul said. He was still staring at the dagger, and his eyes were almost popping out. The complexity of the elven runes on this dagger was beyond what he had learned. He was dazzled by it, and for a moment he could not tell whether the elven runes on this dagger had been repaired by someone. 10 Valant gold coins, the vendor said. 10 Valant gold coins were about half a year's rent for the small attic where Ronan lived. Chapter 19 Storage Black Ring. Too expensive. At this time, Paul's attention has shifted from the durability of the weapon to the price. He couldn't see the durability of the weapon, so he could only hope that Ronan would be lucky and buy a dagger with good durability. Next, he would bargain with the vendor. As a down-and-out noble, he often bargained when buying witchcraft materials in order to save money during his early days in Triumph City. He thought to himself that his bargaining ability was even better than his witchcraft attainments. After Paul and the vendor had a fierce argument, Ronan finally paid 7 Valant gold coins and got the dagger. This dagger was originally without a sheath, but Paul still pestered the vendor and asked the vendor to give him an ebony dagger sheath. Ronan inserted the dagger into the sheath and hid it in his waist bag. After that, he and Paul walked around Diagon Alley for a while and then left. In the following days, Ronan stayed in the small attic almost all day, refining ki, accelerating growth, drawing talismans, and making medicine. The days were extremely fulfilling. Although the sapling of the immortal tree had only grown a few millimeters, its vitality was growing stronger and stronger. It continuously refined the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and gave half of it to Ronan. Paul brought him another first level magic potion formula, the Black Remover. Long-term use of this potion can make the skin white and bright. The success rate of refining is only slightly higher than that of the anti-aging potion, and it is also considered a first level magic potion with a relatively low success rate. Ronan took time to refine some and sold them to Paul. Based on his experience in his previous life, Ronan felt that the market response to the Black Remover would not be bad. Later it turned out to be true. Paul said that, when he and his younger brother sold the Black Remover, they put on the name of Anti-Aging Potion Alchemist product and it immediately sold well. Ronan spent more time refining the anti-aging potion and the Black Remover, and the speed of money income also increased. The 3,000 gold coins that were originally expected to take 2 months to raise, can now be raised in more than half a month. In the early morning, Ronan was sitting cross-legged on the bed, breathing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ronan released his spiritual sense and scanned it, and he knew that it was Paul who knocked on the door. Who? Your close friend, Paul Wilson. Ronan opened the door and let Paul in. What's the matter? Ronan asked after locking the door. Paul looked excited. Good news. Have you heard of the Howard family? Ronan nodded. I have heard of it, a wizard family. Paul smiled. Do you remember the necromancer I mentioned to you before? It's the organization that recruits people who failed the college qualification test. Ronan certainly remembered that when he heard Paul talk about this organization, he thought that this organization did not invite him to join. At the same time, he was relieved and a little sad. The Kingdom Wizard Council followed the clues of the informant and found that the Howard family was actually connected to the Undead Society. The base of the Undead Society in Triumph City was provided by the Howard family. After this was discovered, the law enforcement wizards of the Wizard Council attacked the Howard family with thunder. No one in the family escaped. Under the order of His Majesty the King, after an interrogation, both men and women were sent to the guillotine. The things left by the Howard family will be auctioned at the Weiss auction house in Central City the day after tomorrow. The Howard family can be ranked in the top 10 among the wizard families in Triumph City. There must be a lot of storage magic tools in them. Perhaps we can pick up bargains in the auction and buy storage magic tools at a lower price. Ronan knew what Paul meant. At the auction of the Howard family's relics, most people's attention will only focus on those high-level magic tools. People who go to the auction usually leave enough money to bid for those high-level magic tools that are in short supply. It was an ordinary storage magic device, and people who went to the auction didn't care much about it. This gave him a chance to pick up a bargain. However, only registered wizards can enter the auction. Paul said, give me the money, and I can go in for you. Okay. Ronan agreed. He didn't want to show his face. He took out a voucher from the bookcase and wrote a letter of authorization on parchment, signed his name, stamped his fingerprints and family crest. Go to the Lani vault and take out the gold coins for me. Ronan handed the voucher and the letter of authorization to Paul and said, the Lani vault is a bank opened by members of the Augustus royal family in Triumph City, located in the middle city. Ronan opened an account in it and kept most of the gold coins in it. Don't use my money to buy your things. Ronan did not forget to remind him. Don't worry, Ronan, I cherish our friendship very much. Paul took the voucher and the letter of authorization. Time passed quickly, and it was 2 days later in a blink of an eye. Ronan was drawing a talisman when he heard a knock on the door. He transferred the objects used to draw the talisman to the world of cultivation, and after returning, he scanned with his spiritual sense and knew it was Paul. Who? My dear friend who brought you good news, Paul Wilson. Ronan opened the door and Paul jumped in. After Ronan locked the door, Paul took out a black jade ring tied with a red rope from his waist bag. Ronan, my good friend, thank you for fulfilling your mission. Paul said excitedly. This black jade ring is made of soul-soothing jade and is used with space magic to create a storage magic device. Not only does it have a cubic storage space, it also has the effect of calming the mind. Have you heard of the famous Celia Howard? She is the wife of the eldest son of the Howard family. She is very beautiful and charming. She is nearly 40 years old, but still has the youthful appearance of a 20-year-old. She has had affairs with many dignitaries and high-level wizards in Triumph City. This ring is her storage magic device and soothing magic device. No matter what time it is hung on her chest. What a pity. King Augustus V is very determined to punish the cultists. Such a beautiful lady still lost her head. When Celia Howard was alive, I don't know how many elites she attracted, and many people begged her, but couldn't get her. But now that she has become a headless corpse, people suddenly think she was dirty when she was alive. Her personal belongings have become unlucky items. Not many people were willing to bid for it at the auction. A second-hand 1 cubic meter storage ring like this generally costs at least 7,000 Valan gold coins to buy. Guess how much I paid you to buy it? Paul said nothing, looking at Ronan. I'm just a kid, and you're still guessing? Ronan immediately said. Ronan, you're so boring. Paul revealed the answer. 3,500 gold coins. Chapter 20. Everything is ready. Return to the world of cultivation. 3,500 gold coins? Ronan frowned, his face showing doubt. Isn't there only 2,500 gold coins in my account? I paid you a portion of it. Paul put his hand on Ronan's shoulder. Are you a good friend? Of course. I don't know if you mind this ring. If you also think this ring is unlucky, I'll take it. 3,500. Just consider it as a loan from me. Ronan didn't have so many taboos and immediately took the black storage ring. Untie the red string tied to the ring and put it on the ring finger of his right hand. His mind probed it and immediately found a 1 cubic meter storage space. Okay, the 1,000 gold coins I paid for you will be deducted from your future profit share. Paul said. Okay. After Ronan sent Paul out, he began to explore the ring. He held a copper wine glass on the table. Using his mental power, he used it as a bridge to connect the wine glass and the black ring. Suddenly, the wine glass was stored in the space of the ring. I wonder if this ring can hold life. Ronan immediately went to the kitchen, opened the chicken coop, reached in, and grabbed a chicken that was going to be used for bleeding and drawing talismans. The chicken clucked and flapped its wings vigorously, trying to break free from Ronan's hand. Chicken feathers flew everywhere. Ronan used his spirit to connect the chicken to the ring. However, there was no response. It seems that the ring cannot hold life. Ronan stuffed the chicken back into the coop. He walked to the bed, lay down, reached under the bed, and took out 8 leather bags containing talismans one after another, and stored them in the ring. He also stored the elf dagger in the waste bag. I have the talisman, the weapon, and the storage magic tool. It's time to explore the place where the monks gather. Ronan's heart moved, and the whole person disappeared out of thin air in the small attic, and came to the room of the world of immortal cultivation. He changed into a long gown, tied his hair into a bun, and inserted a jade hairpin. From the handsome young master of the Larens family, he became the handsome Mr. Luo. When he walked out of the moon gate of the courtyard, a group of beautiful maids had already been waiting there, waiting for him to come out and serve. The maids were about to bow and salute, but Ronan waved his hand and said, "No need to be polite, call Master Guan." After hearing this, the maids immediately withdrew and went to find Guan Fu. In the living room, Ronan drank the top quality tea Guan brewed by the servants, waiting for Guan Fu to come. Not long after, Guan Fu arrived. The young master has finally come out of retreat. Guan Fu clasped his fists and bowed. "Master Guan, have you heard anything about cultivating immortals recently?" Ronan asked. He had not walked out of the courtyard for more than 10 days. "I'm ashamed that this old servant is incompetent and still has nothing." Guan Fu wiped his forehead. "I'm going on a long journey. Please prepare for me." Ronan said. "Yes." Guan Fu clasped his fists again and withdrew. Guan Fu was indeed a good butler. After Ronan gave the order, he ordered other servants to get various things in an orderly manner. After about an hour, he took a bundle In the bundle, there were clothes, maps, road passes, fire sticks and other things. There is also a road pass. Guanfu is really thoughtful in preparing it. Ronan looked at the road pass and saw that the name on it was not his own, but Zhao Long. At the same time, the 3 guards in Luo's mansion were also ready. These 3 people were all strong men over 1.8 meters tall, and all of them were muscular. One was good at gunplay, one was proficient in sticks, and one had excellent eyesight. It was said that he could never miss a target with flying knives and arts within 100 steps. These 3 people were not the top masters in the martial arts world, but they were all first-class players. I want to go out by myself, so I won't bother the 3 masters. Ronan said to the 3 guards. Mr. Luo, the road is dangerous. Take me with you. If you encounter a thief, I will pierce him with 1 spear. Master Yang, who is proficient in spears, shook the red tassel spear in his hand and said to Ronan. Yes, Mr. Luo, I have been taking your money for several months without doing anything for you. I feel uneasy. Master Sun, who is good at sticks, held the panlong stick in his hand and said to Ronan. Ronan clasped his fists and said, 3 of you, the safety of my property and the mansion is equally important. I will trouble you to continue to guard it for me. As for the safety on the road, I have other plans. Thank you for your concern. Ronan said this, and the 3 guards stopped. Mister, do you need a horse? Guanfu asked. Ronan planned to go with the light amulet, so he naturally didn't need a horse. He shook his head and said to Guanfu, Mr. Guan, when I'm away, I'll have to trouble you to take care of everything in this mansion. As he said that, he took out a silver note from the inner pocket of his long gown and handed it to Guanfu. He might not be back for a while, and Guanfu would need money to take care of everything in the mansion. Guanfu agreed to Ronan and took the silver note with both hands. Ronan then put the bag on his body, slung it over his shoulder, and left the mansion. After leaving the city, Ronan went to the light spot on the jade pendant of the Liu family's ancestor. His AI Hongmeng had already memorized the location of the light spot on the jade pendant of the Liu family's ancestor and the map of Yu. He could identify the path without looking at the map. When he walked to a deserted place, Ronan immediately took out a piece of cloth from the black storage ring and covered his head and face. Then, he took out 10 amulets. Injecting magic power, the 10 amulets spontaneously ignited without fire. Strengths shot out from the amulet, turning into layers of invisible films that overlapped and wrapped him. After using the amulet, he took out 10 more light body amulets. He injected his magic power into them and suddenly felt his body suddenly lighten. All the magic power of the 10 light body amulets was added to him. Ronan used his mind to control the magic power of the light body amulets and pushed his feet hard. The whole person shot forward like a monkey on fire. He chose a small path and ran towards the location of the jade pendant's light spot. Because of the fast speed in the mud on the path, he brought up rolling dust wherever he passed. The rolling dust under his feet was particularly violent. From a distance, it felt like flying sand and stones and walking on dust. The jade pendant's light spot was in the northwest of Yu State, which was also the edge of Yu State. According to the map, there were mountains there. Deeper, the map was blank. In other words, no mortal had ever gone deep into those mountains. Ronan felt more and more that this was where the immortal cultivators gathered. He had to cross most of the Yu Kingdom to reach his destination. So, he selected several cities on the map as his destination. Every time he approached a city, he would put away the power of the light body talisman, take off the mask, and walk forward with only the talisman. After choosing an inn in the city to stay, he returned to the wizard world to replenish the talismans consumed that day. After eating and resting in the wizard world, he returned to the immortal world and continued on his journey. Chapter 21 Innate Warrior. Ronan used the light body talisman to travel quickly. After 5 days, he finally arrived at the nearest town to his destination, Lianshan Town. His eyes passed the outline of Lianshan Town and looked further away. He saw the outline of a group of mountains shrouded in thick fog. The light spot on the jade pendant left by the ancestor of the Liu family was here. Let's find an inn to stay first. In order not to attract attention, Ronan wore a simple linen gown and carried a linen bag. He walked towards Lianshan Town with a dusty look. After arriving in Lianshan town, Ronan clearly felt that the spiritual energy of the world here was a little richer than other places. Perhaps the deep mountains are where the monks gather. Ronan looked at the faint shadows of the mountains in the distance and thought. He found an inn in the town and booked a room. After arriving at the first floor, he called the waiter, ordered some food and drinks, and then asked, "Brother, has anyone been into that mountain before?" The waiter said, "Of course, there are woodcutters and hunters in the town who go into the mountain to cut wood and hunt. But the depths of the mountain are extremely dangerous. I heard that some tourists went into the mountain to play, went deep into the mountain, and never came out again." After hearing this, Ronan had no expression on his face, just nodded, and asked the waiter to serve the food and drinks. After eating and drinking, when paying the bill, the waiter asked casually, "Young master, you look very unfamiliar, and you don't speak with an accent from the town. You must be an outsider. I wonder what you are doing here. Let me say one more thing. The deep mountain is very dangerous. Young master, please don't go in. I just came here to relieve my sorrow." Ronan said, "The deep mountain is dangerous. I will not go in." After paying the bill, Ronan went upstairs and returned to the guest room. East of Lianshan town, a young man in his 20s ran quickly into a mansion. After entering the mansion, he went straight to a room. Outside the closed door, he knelt on one knee, clasped his hands together, and panted, "Leader, a tourist came to the inn today. He asked our people about the things deep in the mountains." After a moment, a voice came from the room. "I know, leave." "Yes," the young man said, and then respectfully left. The room was dark, with a cushion in the middle. A person was sitting cross-legged on the cushion, breathing in and out. After the young man outside the house left, this person slowly finished his training and opened his eyes. This person looked to be in his 40s, with black hair that was scattered behind, two thick beards on his lips, and a beard on his chin that reached his neck. His eyebrows were like knives, slanting into his temples, and his eyes were like eagles, with sharp eyes. He was the current #1 martial artist in Zhao State, the leader of the Xiandi Alliance, Qin Zangshan. A few years ago, his internal and external skills had reached the pinnacle, reaching the peak of the innate warrior, and he could initially feel a mysterious free air between heaven and earth. He felt that perhaps this was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the legend of cultivating immortals. However, after years of hard research, he still didn't know how to use this energy. So he mobilized all branches of the Zhao Xiandi League to collect anecdotes about cultivating immortals in various places. After searching for a while, his men collected a piece of news. Someone claimed that his ancestors left a token. As long as they held the token and came to the depths of these mountains, they could enter the place where the cultivators gathered. And the token was taken by that person's great-grandfather, who said he would come to these mountains to visit the cultivators. That person's great-grandfather left home and didn't return for a long time and lost his trace. They thought that the ancestor should have gone to the fairyland and lingered there. Since then, this legend has been passed down from generation to generation in their family. When Qin Zangshan first came to the outside of the mountains, he really felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was actually a little richer than that of the central plains. So, he thought that there might really be immortals in the depths of the mountains. However, he went deep into the mountains and entered the fog several times, but not only did he not see the immortals, but he also lost his way. He walked for most of the day before returning to the original path. He pondered what the man said and felt that maybe, only if he held the token in his hand, would the immortals appear to guide him. Since then, Qin Zangshan sent his men to continue collecting information about cultivating immortals, and at the same time, sent people to build a town here. Lianshan town was built by him. The permanent population of the entire Lianshan town is his people. He stayed here to monitor those who wanted to enter the mountain to find immortals, so as to take away the token and intercept the immortal fate. In order not to arouse suspicion, the people arranged in Lianshan town, except for him and his 3 confidants, had not practiced any martial arts. Will it be my immortal fate this time? Qin Zangshan narrowed his eyes slightly, and his chest and abdomen rose and fell. He stood up suddenly, wanting to capture the tourist and torture him to interrogate him about what he knew about cultivating immortals. In fact, there is no danger in going deep into the mountains. No matter how you go, you will return to the original path and walk out of the forest. The waiter of the inn said that those who disappeared after entering the mountains were not trapped in the mountains, but were killed by him. In the past, those who wanted to enter the mountains were caught by him personally and tortured. However, they could not get any information about cultivating immortals. In order to prevent these people from telling the outside world about this, he killed them. The relatives and friends of these people came here to look for their traces. He asked his men in the town to tell them that these people lost their traces after entering the depths of the mountains. If the relatives and friends of these people still want to enter the mountains to search, then he would kill them to confirm the rumor that there is danger in the depths of the mountains. In the inn, Ronan was drinking tea while thinking about the waiter's words. According to the waiter, those who entered the depths of the mountains never came out again. One possibility is that those people have all arrived at the place where the monks gather and don't want to come out. The other possibility is that those people encountered danger in the depths of the mountains. Sensing the possibility of danger, Ronan couldn't help but think again and again whether he should go in and take a look. The jade pendant of the Liu family ancestor has all the light spots marked. It's impossible for him to send his descendants to a dangerous place. Thinking of this, Ronan felt that the possibility of encountering danger was not high, so he wanted to go and take a look. Thinking of this, he drank the tea in the cup and stood up suddenly. But suddenly, his eyebrows raised. For the sake of caution, he has been releasing his spiritual sense since he came to the world of cultivation. At this time, he found that a strong existence has entered the range of his spiritual sense. Immediately, he took out 20 amulets and 20 light body amulets from the storage black ring, injected mana into them, and used them on himself. Suddenly, the protective film he already had was superimposed with 20 layers again, and his body became lighter. Then, he took out the elf dagger from the ring, held it in his hand, and concentrated on sensing the uninvited guest approaching him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Entering the Place of Cultivating Immortals. His spiritual sense spread, and Ronan took in everything within 50 meters. The visitor was walking towards his room on the corridor on the second floor of the inn. At the same time, the waiter of the inn walked over from the other side of the corridor. The visitor stopped and nodded to the waiter. The waiter nodded in response, walked to the door, and said, "Sir, can you open the door? I'll make you a pot of the best lounging tea." Ronan knew from the interaction between the visitor and the waiter that they were in collusion. As soon as the waiter finished speaking, in order to make it easier to exert force, Ronan raised his right hand holding the elf dagger slightly and pulled it back. He made a lunge with both feet. Then, he suddenly kicked the ground. Bang! Under the power of the light body talisman, he turned into a residual shadow and rushed forward, smashing the wooden door of the inn into pieces. The waiter who called the door didn't know what happened, and the whole person was knocked away by Ronan. His body was like a cannonball, smashing through the wooden door of another room. He was still going strong, and he broke open the window of that room and fell out from the second floor. After knocking one person away, Ronan continued to move forward, and the sharp blade of the elven dagger pointed directly at Qin Zangshan's chest. Qin Zangshan saw Ronan's speed, which was so fast that he had never seen it before, and he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. But he had experienced many battles and was not afraid of danger. He used his internal force and pushed his right palm forward. The ki gang around his body burst out, and his beard and clothes flew up. An invisible palm gang emerged from his right palm, like a thick wall, pressing towards Ronan. As Ronan rushed forward, the elven dagger stabbed out. The elven dagger hit the palm gang, and the elven runes on it emitted waves. The palm gang that had made countless martial artists in Zao State hate was broken by the magic of the elven runes. Ronan's figure suddenly passed by Qin Zangshan. Qin Zangshan felt a flash before his eyes, and his right palm hurt. Half of his palm was cut off by Ronan's elf dagger, and blood was dripping. The next moment, his neck felt cold again. Ronan's elf dagger slashed across his neck. The warrior was full of blood, and a stream of blood gushed out from his wound like a fountain. Ronan rushed behind him, controlled the power of the light body talisman, and combined with the power of his body, he turned suddenly. His figure once again left a residual image, and ran towards Kinzangshan's back. When he was about to run close, the dagger in his hand stabbed forward again. The dagger easily broke through Kinzangshan's body protection, and pierced into his back. Blood splashed, but was blocked by the power of the amulet. Ronan continued to move forward, and the whole person pushed Kinzangshan, and knocked a room through. The two fell from the second floor together. Bang! The two fell to the ground, stirring up mud and dust. Ronan's amulet was of master level, and the thin membrane on his body was intact. Kinzangshan's physique was also amazing. He fell from the second floor, but except for the scratches on his clothes, his skin, flesh, and bones were not damaged at all. Ronan pulled out the elf dagger and stabbed him in the back. He knew that this person was physically strong, and the damage he had caused to him was not enough to subdue him. He wanted to find out the purpose of this person, but did not want to kill him, so he stabbed him in the back again. "Fairy, spare me. Fairy, spare me," Kinzangshan shouted, while coughing up blood. He was the #1 martial artist in Zao State, but he was subdued by someone today. He felt that this person might be the legendary immortal cultivator. Ronan stabbed Kinzangshan twice more in the back, summoned Hangmeng, found Kinzangshan's tendons, cut them with a dagger, and asked, "Who are you? Why do you want to harm me?" "I'm Kinzangshan, the leader of the Xiandi League." Kinzangshan looked at Ronan with fear, his voice trembled, and his usual momentum disappeared. Ronan was moved when he heard it. When he first came to this world and inquired about the news, he heard the famous name Kinzangshan, the first martial artist in Zao State, and the leader of the Xiandi League. But he never thought that he would meet this person here. "What are you doing here?" Ronan asked. Kinzangshan told Ronan his purpose. After that, he pleaded with Ronan, "Immortal, I'm devoted to seeking immortality in hope that you will take me to the place of immortal cultivation. From now on, I will follow your lead, eh?" Before he finished speaking, Ronan cut off his head with the elf dagger. The elf dagger was sharp, and it was effortless to cut off the head. Kinzangshan had been the leader for many years, and Ronan was very tempted to have such a person as his younger brother. But Kinzangshan had been in a high position for many years, and he was ruthless. In terms of scheming and means, he might not be as good as him in both his lives. It was because Kinzangshan did not know the power of the talisman and the sharpness of the dagger today that he fell into his hands. If he let this person be his younger brother, he would be putting himself in danger. During the questioning just now, Ronan learned two pieces of news. One was that someone had come here before, holding the ancestral token, and then lost his trace. The second was that there was no danger in the deep mountains, and if you walked in, you would just get lost, and you would still be able to return to the original place in the end. It seems that holding the jade pendant of the ancestor of the Liu family can enter the place of cultivation. Ronan guessed in his heart. He put the elf dagger back into his waist bag, and then touched Kinzangshan's body. But he didn't touch anything, and after cursing inwardly, he left. The elf dagger was indeed not an ordinary item. After killing, there was not a trace of blood on it. Ronan took advantage of the fact that the power of the light body talisman had not dissipated, and ran towards the mountains. He did not stop until he saw the thick fog. In order to prevent the immortal cultivators from noticing that he had a large number of talismans and a high level of cultivation, he unlocked the power of the light body talisman and the amulet. He also collected all his ancient wood longevity power from the meridians into the danshan, and gathered it into a ball. Then, he took out the jade pendant of the ancestor of the Liu family, and walked towards the thick fog. After entering the thick fog, he saw that the thick fog in front of him split to the left and right, leaving a path for him. Ronan walked slowly along this path, tensing his mind. He thought that, if he encountered danger, he would immediately travel back to the wizard world. After walking for a while, the path came to the end, and the thick fog dissipated, revealing another scene of heaven and earth. What came into view was a verdant and towering mountain that pierced the clouds. At the foot of the mountain, there are several buildings that look like fairy and magnificent. The mountainside is covered with a layer of light gauze woven by fog. Further up, there is a thick sea of clouds, and the top of the mountain cannot be seen. When he moved his eyes from the peak to the front, the scene he saw made Ronan dumbfounded. Looking ahead for thousands of meters, there is a large area of scattered shanty houses. Muds of farmland are interspersed among these large shanty houses. Several small rivers pass between the farmland and the shanty houses. In the creek closest to him, there are several mature and beautiful women who are pounding and washing clothes with wooden sticks. While Ronan was in a daze, he suddenly saw a child of 4 or 5 years old, walking with a pair of short legs, holding a small wooden sword in his hand, running towards him. "Brother, brother." The child ran up to Ronan and said, "I haven't seen you before. Are you new here?" The child was about to talk to Ronan, but a beautiful woman who was washing clothes ran up to him, grabbed the child, and said to Ronan with a smile, "My fellow Taoist, are you new here? You have to go to Deacon Z to register for citizenship." As she spoke, the young woman raised her white arm with her sleeves rolled up, and pointed her green finger at a shack not far away. Chapter 23, Huansin Sect Immortal Realm. Green Mountains, Immortal Residences, Shanty Towns, Deacon Z. Before Ronan came, he had very little information. Now facing all this, his heart was full of fog. He bowed to the young woman in front of him and said, "My fellow Taoist, I came here with a token and a few words left by my ancestors. I'm not very familiar with this place. I wonder if you can help me solve my doubts." The young woman smiled and said, "This is not the first time I have seen a fellow Taoist like you. My grandfather was the same at the beginning. When he came, he only had the token left by his ancestors, and knew nothing else. Where is this place, do you know?" Ronan shook his head slightly. The young woman said, "This is the immortal realm of Huansin Sect." She pointed to the mountain in the distance. "That's where the mountain gate of Huansin Sect is located. Outer sect disciples live in the other courtyard at the foot of Huansin Sect's mountain. Those are the magnificent buildings you see. Inner sect disciples live in caves above the mountainside. There are spiritual veins under the mountain peak. So the spiritual energy of Huansin Sect's fairyland is the most concentrated in that mountain. Especially in the caves, where you can open up the eye of the spiritual spring and the spiritual energy is abundant. The farther you are from the mountain, the thinner the spiritual energy is. At the foot of the mountain, those of us who rely on Huansin Sect live. The residential area near the foot of the mountain is for wealthy casual cultivators to live in. The worst residential area costs 3 mid-grade spiritual stones a year. This shanty town only costs 3 low-grade spiritual stones a year. It is said that thousands of years ago, there were no buildings at the foot of the mountain. At the beginning, there were only a few cultivators who opened up caves and practiced in the mountains. But during their long years of practice, they gave birth to offspring, and their offspring had offspring. As the population grew, the resources on the mountain were not enough. The qualifications of the descendants of these cultivators vary. Some even have no spiritual roots at all, and are just mortals. After several generations, the blood ties have long been diluted. The first few cultivators opened up this area at the foot of the mountain for their descendants with poor qualifications to live. As time passed, gradually, even this area at the foot of the mountain could not accommodate so many people. The living environment has become much worse. Some descendants of cultivators without spiritual roots could not stand the environment here, so they left the return of the true immortal realm, and went to live in the secular world. Your ancestor and I should be one of these descendants. Later, this place gradually evolved into the return of the true immortal realm, which is divided into the inner gate, outer gate, mansion area, and shanty town. With the power of us cultivators, it is not difficult to build a mansion. The reason why the buildings in the mansion area and the shanty town are simple is that we can't let the residences of casual cultivators like us be the same as those of the return of the true immortal sect disciples. The residences in the shanty towns are more simple, which is also the general reason. The rent in the mansion area is expensive, not only because the spiritual energy is more abundant than in the shanty towns, but also because it is more comfortable to live in than in the shanty towns. By the way, the young woman suddenly changed the subject. "My fellow Taoist, did your ancestors leave you any spiritual stones?" "No." Ronan shook his head, and then asked, "Without spiritual stones, can you not stay here?" The young woman said, not really, you can be exempted from rent and assigned a shanty house by cultivating spiritual fields and digging spiritual mines for the Huanzan sect. But, my fellow Taoist, you can ask in the future whether there are any of your people in the inner sect of the Huanzan sect. If you can find them, if your people have a lot of say in the sect, maybe they can bring you into the sect. At the very least, they can support you. After Ronan heard this, he immediately denied the idea of pretending to be a descendant of the Liu family. Pretending to be a descendant of the Liu family is extremely dangerous. If the immortals have some means of testing bloodline, he, as an imposter, will definitely suffer. Moreover, in order to prevent the Liu family from having ancestors of the same clan in the sect, he had to conceal this matter. Although even if there are still ancestors of the Liu family in the Huanzan sect, the current Liu family should be regarded as descendants of the Liu family ancestors, and the blood relationship is already very shallow. But if he knew that the immortal fate of his descendants was intercepted by others, he would inevitably be angry. After thinking for a while, Ronan began to think about whether he should live in the Huanzan sect's immortal domain. He didn't know how concentrated the spiritual energy was on the mountain, but the spiritual energy of the world in the shanty town was still much thinner than that in the wizard world. It was only about 1/20th of that in the wizard world. He had no need to stay in the shanty town to practice. What's more, the purpose of his coming here was to obtain more powerful spells, talismans, etc. So he asked the young woman, Dao, is there any place here where I can get skills and spells? Didn't your ancestors leave you any skills? The young woman raised her eyebrows slightly. I stayed. Ronan said, but I'm afraid that my spiritual roots are not compatible with the secret book, so I need to find other secret books to practice. That's right. The young woman said, there is a market here where you can buy and sell various cultivation items. Hearing about the market, Ronan was slightly excited. Where there is a market, there is buying and selling. His light body amulet and amulet can be sold through the market. After exchanging them for spiritual stones, he can buy more powerful spells, talismans and other items. However, I'm new here, and I can draw talismans, which will definitely arouse suspicion. After all, the spiritual energy in the secular world is now thin. Whether it is cultivation or drawing talismans, it is basically impossible. It seems that I still have to register here and pretend to practice here for a while. After a period of time, I will sell talismans. Thinking of this, Ronan said to the young woman, thank you for clearing up my doubts. I will go and register, and we will talk later. After that, he bowed and said goodbye, and after pinching the fat face of the woman and her child, he walked towards the shanty, where Deacon Z was. In front of the door of the shanty, there was a man who looked to be in his 40s, with dark skin, wearing straw sandals, sitting on a small wooden chair, smoking a pipe. Seeing Ronan coming over, he raised his head and exhaled a puff of thick smoke. New here? Ronan bowed and saluted, but Deacon Z, it's me. Deacon Z put the pipe next to the wooden chair and stood up. Come in, I will register you. As he said, he took Ronan to a desk. Name: Ronan. Luo. There is a foundation building real person in the sect named Luo. Deacon Z muttered, while registering in the book. Where do you want to rent? Do you have spirit stones? No spirit stones. Rent in a shanty town. Farming for free, or mining for free. Farming. Soon, after he registered, he took out a token from the shelf at the back. He wrote a few words on the token. Then, he handed it to Ronan. Here is the information of your residence and spirit field. Go find it yourself. After saying that, he stood up, walked out, sat on the small wooden stool again, and smoked a pipe. Chapter 24, Market. There is a house number on the left side of the door of each shanty. Ronan found his own shanty according to the information on the token. The house was next to the young woman, and the distance between the two houses was only about 50 steps. His shanty was much smaller than the young woman's. The spiritual field allocated to him was 200 meters in front of the door of the shanty. The spiritual field was abandoned and overgrown with weeds. Entering the shanty, it can be said that there were only 4 walls inside. The wooden house of more than 30 square meters had only a simple straw mat. In the corner, there was a chamber pot and a stained wooden barrel. What kind of barrel is this? Is it a night incense barrel? Ronan looked at the environment and shook his head secretly. If he was the ancestor of the Liu family and lived in this environment before, it would be better to go to the secular world. Fortunately, I can return to the wizard world to live. Ronan was grateful and walked out of the shanty. At this time, the young woman's child, with a round head and a small wooden hammer, ran over. Brother, you live here. The child was not even half the height of Ronan. He laughed and waved a small wooden hammer, running around Ronan's feet, trying to tease Ronan and play with him. Creaky, the sound of the wooden door opening was heard. The beautiful woman ran out anxiously, frowning her eyebrows, looking at the child with a little bit of anger. Don't bother my brother all the time. As she said that, she pulled the child away from Ronan's feet and smiled awkwardly. My fellow Taoist, I'm sorry, there are mostly adults around here, and no one can play with the children. Then, she looked at Ronan's shanty house. You were assigned here. I didn't expect us to be neighbors. She looked in the direction of the spiritual field again and asked, where is your spiritual field? There. Ronan pointed to the spiritual field covered with weeds. The young woman took a look and said, after the land is divided, you have to go to Deacon Lin to get seeds and books on farming. Now the shanty town is managed by the Yu family, a cultivation family in the mansion area. Deacon Z, who is registered, and Deacon Lin, who is responsible for farming in the shanty town, are managed by different members of the Yu family. Deacon Z will not care how much land you plant, or how you plant it. Deacon Lin is in charge of this. When you go to him to get seeds and books, he will tell you the rules of farming. That is, how much you need to hand in a year, to be exempted from rent. Generally speaking, Deacon Lin will not make any requirements on you in the first year. Because beginners have only learned for a year, and are just getting started, they will not have much production. In the second year, if you do not meet the standards, and cannot pay the rent, you can only go mining. After paying the rent, you will be expelled from the Huans and Sect's fairyland. After the young woman and Ronan talked about some more rules of the fairyland, the two chatted for a while and exchanged names. This young woman is called Li Yao, and her child is called Wang Xiaokan. As for who her husband was, she didn't say. Ronan asked Li Yao where Deacon Lin was. After Li Yao said goodbye and took Wang Xiaokan back, he walked towards Deacon Lin's shanty. After an intense stick of time, Ronan returned to the shanty carrying a large bundle. He opened the bundle and found a large bag of seeds. There was also a book. The book detailed the essentials of planting spiritual fields, as well as several must-learn spells for planting spiritual fields. They were all first-level low-grade spells suitable for low-level key refining monks to practice. Soil loosening spell, weeding spell, small rain spell. Although they were all first-level spells, it took a long time to learn them all and to perform them proficiently. No wonder there are no requirements for the first year. This first year is for newcomers to practice magic power and spells. Ronan flipped through the book again and threw it aside. He didn't plan to farm. After a few months, he sold some of the skilled level amulets and light body amulets. Then, he would have the spiritual stones to pay the rent. I wonder what good things are there in the market? Ronan came here for the magic and other things of the immortal world. Now that he finally had time, he thought of going to the market to take a look. Knock, knock, knock. Ronan knocked on Li Yao's door. After a while, the wooden door opened. Li Yao's pretty face was revealed. And behind her, Wang Xiaokan stuck his head out and looked at Ronan. Brother, are you here to play with me? Before Li Yao opened her mouth, Wang Xiaokan asked excitedly. Ronan ignored Wang Xiaokan and said to Li Yao, fellow Daoist Li, I'm bothering you. I have something to ask you. Fellow Daoist Luo, why are you so polite? We are neighbors. Maybe I will have to trouble you in the future. Li Yao smiled and said, please come in and talk. Li Yao pulled Wang Xiaokan back and made way for Ronan. Ronan said sorry for bothering him again and went into Li Yao's room. Li Yao's room was indeed much bigger than his, estimated to be more than 70 square meters. There was a hall and 2 rooms. There was a square table in the room, with 4 wooden chairs next to it, and a set of ceramic tea sets on the table. There were only Li Yao and Wang Xiaokan in the room, but Li Yao's husband was not there. Lee Yao made a pot of tea for Ronan. Deo Ioluo, I don't have spiritual tea, so I can only treat you with secular tea. Please forgive me. Deo Ioli, you are too polite. Ronan asked, I don't know where the market is. Can you tell me? Oh, I thought you wanted to ask about planting spiritual fields. Lee Yao said, Deo Ioluo, wait a minute. With that, Lee Yao walked away. As soon as Lee Yao walked away, Wang Xiaodakan came up to him. Brother Ronan, you are going to the market. Take me with you. I know the way. After Lee Yao came back, he pulled Wang Xiaodakan away from Ronan. She placed a yellowed paper on Ronan's desk. Fellow Daoist Luo, the shanty town is very large. It is the outermost part of the Huans and sects fairyland. It is like a circle, with the Huans and sect's spiritual vein as a center, and it circles around the Huans insect. The shanty town we are in is to the east of the Huans and sect's spiritual vein, so it is also called the East Shanty Town. This is the map of the East District. There are 3 markets in it, all managed by the Yu family in the mansion area. As she said that, she pointed to the 3 red dots on the map with her green jade finger. Mom, I know the way, so let me take brother Ronan there. Wang Xiaodakan said. Don't make a fuss. Lee Yao said. Wang Xiaodakan suddenly cried, you said you would take me to the market to play, when I felt the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. I felt it last night, but you didn't keep your word. Lee Yao said with a slight frown, there was only a gust of cold wind last night, and you almost caught a cold. There is no spiritual energy of heaven and earth. As she said that, she pursed her lips and smiled awkwardly at Ronan. Just now, Ronan called up Hang Meng and memorized the map of the East Shanty Town. He stood up and said to Lee Yao, thank you, fellow Daoist Lee. After that, he walked out of the house. Fellow Daoist Luo, don't you need a map? Lee Yao picked up the map, stood up, and said to Ronan, I roughly remember the location of the market. Ronan thanked him again and left the house. Thanks to book friend 202105300700156553 and book friend 201712252323233877 for their monthly tickets. I saw a reader who also supported the old book. Chapter 25, The Flying Boat and the Ghostwriter. Mom, if you don't let me take brother Ronan with me, what will happen if he gets lost? Don't worry about that, just go and practice. Ronan went out, and the voices of Lee Yao and her son came from behind him. He smiled and followed the red dots on the map, walking along the path in the shanty town. Although the path in the shanty town is simple, and not paved with stone slabs, it looks clean. There are green grass and flowers on the side of the road, and the sky is blue and white clouds. Walking on the path in the shanty town, it feels like walking on an original rural path. As I was walking, I suddenly saw a female cultivator sitting on a wooden chair in front of a shanty house not far away, looking at me. Seeing Ronan looking over, the female cultivator chuckled and said, fellow Daoist, do you want to come in and play? As the female cultivator spoke, she leaned on the back of the wooden chair and stretched her legs. She showed off her round chest, slender waist and long legs. She also deliberately tilted her neck to reveal her snow white neck and delicate collarbone. Ronan discovered that the female cultivators in the shanty towns all had fair skin. It seemed that the cultivation technique could change a person's skin condition and make them more beautiful. He didn't notice it because he was a noble young master, living a life of luxury and having fair skin. The female cultivator who wanted to invite him to play had the same fair skin as Lee Yao, but upon closer inspection, her facial features were not as delicate as Lee Yao's. However, the softness on her face was something that a good girl like Lee Yao didn't have. Thank you, fellow Taoist, but unfortunately I'm short of money. It was a bit unexpected for Ronan to see a prostitute when he came to the world of cultivation. However, he didn't show any surprise on his face, but just clasped his fists to the female cultivator and continued to move forward. Fellow Taoist, if you have extra spirit stones in the future, remember to come and patronize my house. The female cultivator said with a sweet smile behind Ronan. After walking for an incense stick of time, Ronan finally arrived at the nearest market to his shanty town. It was a sea market in the eastern shanty town. It was afternoon, the busiest time in the market, with people coming and going. shouts, inquiries and bargaining mixed together, making the place bustling. Ronan walked in and looked at the stalls one by one. Fellow Daoist, this is a first grade upper grade spell, the secret book of the small fire curse. It's genuine, selling at a low price. Fellow Daoist, this is a first grade lower grade shuttle, unused, take it for 1 lower grade spirit stone. Fellow Daoist, a first grade upper grade defensive robe, only worn for 3 days, 5 lower grade spirit stones. As Ronan approached the stalls, vendors shouted at him. Suddenly, Ronan stopped at a stall. Hey, fellow Daoist, do you want to buy a first grade middle grade talisman amulet? You are lucky today. I'm short of money recently, so I'm selling it at a low price. 20 amulets, take it for 1 lower grade spirit stone. Ronan saw at a glance that the amulet was only at the proficient level. With his current talisman drawing skills, drawing talismans of this quality, let alone drawing 20, even drawing 100, would be like playing. I don't have to worry about how to earn spirit stones. Ronan looked away from the stall and walked away. Hey, fellow Taoist, don't look at the low price, this is the real thing. Hey, the stall owner behind him shouted. Ronan walked along and found that the things in the market were really dazzling. Talismans, elixirs, magic tools, array formations. What he was interested in were talisman books, magic secret books and array formation books. Unfortunately, he didn't have spirit stones in his pocket now, so he could only come back to buy them later. As he was walking, he suddenly found that the noisy sound in front of him suddenly quieted down. People flowed to the left and right, making way. Although Ronan hadn't figured out what was going on, he also followed the flow of people and moved aside. Then, he saw 3 monks walking over in a swagger. The monk walking in front looked to be in his 30s, tall, rough looking, with a full beard. He was holding a piece of sugar cane, chewing it as he walked, making a sound of chewing and splashing juice. After chewing it a few times, he spit the sugar cane residue on the ground unscrupulously. The other 2, one on the left and one on the right, straightened their backs and followed slightly behind. Every time the monk with a beard walked to a stall, the stall owner would offer a piece of low-grade spiritual stone and said timidly, "Seventh Master, this is a tribute to you." The monk called Seventh Master nodded. A monk behind him stepped forward and took the spiritual stone. Ronan remembered what Li Yao said, that this market was managed by the Yu family in the mansion area. Perhaps, the 3 monks in front of him were from the Yu family. After strolling for a while, Ronan wanted to leave. He was quite satisfied with this trip to the immortal realm of the return of the true sect. He understood the way to obtain the law of the world of immortal cultivation. In the future, he could compare the law of the world of immortal cultivation with the law of the world of wizards. He would learn from whichever side was better. Just as he was about to leave the market, he heard a sudden noise coming from the crowd in the market. He turned around and saw that those people all looked up in the direction of the mountain gate of the return to the true sect. Ronan also looked over. He saw a huge flying boat, like a flying whale, taking off from the mountain peak of the return to the true sect and flying in one direction. The disciples of Huan's insect, with the group of ghostwriters, have set out again. Are they going to attack Changsheng sect again this time? Alas, I wonder how many widows will be added to our shanty town this time. I don't know how many people can come back, but this is also a great opportunity. Some ghostwriters, if they come back alive, can get a lot of cultivation resources. Now there are several foundation building masters in the inner sect of Huan's insect, who are ghostwriters. Ronan listened to everyone's words and watched the flying boat fly to the horizon and disappear in the clouds. This world of cultivating immortals is also very dangerous. While thinking, he walked out of the market. He wanted to go back to the wizard world to practice. If he returned to the shanty town and then traveled back to the wizard world, if he didn't go out for a long time, he would definitely arouse suspicion. So he planned to stay out. According to the map provided by Li Yao, he walked to another exit leading to the secular world in the eastern shantytown and left the Huans and sect's fairyland. After walking out of the fog, he saw a deep and dense forest. Ronan didn't know where he was, but he didn't care. With a thought in his mind, he disappeared from the spot. In the small attic, Ronan's figure appeared. The spiritual energy of the world in the wizard world is still rich. Ronan felt the abundant spiritual energy of the world and felt refreshed. As he thought, he changed back into the clothes of the wizard world. First, he refined a growth accelerator and poured it on the natal immortal tree. The natal immortal tree absorbed the growth accelerator and became more vigorous. Ronan summoned Hang Meng to analyze the spiritual plant. Spiritual plant, natal immortal tree year. 21 1 year has been added, and I have 1 more year of life. Then, he cast the breeding technique on the natal spiritual plant. The mana in the Danshan was transported to the breeding technique witchcraft model. Immediately, the mana wrapped the natal immortal tree seedling. The seedling gradually grew. When the mana was exhausted, Ronan sat cross-legged on the bed and practiced the ancient wood immortal skill. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.